Doody 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 doody. Hi, you're with Scott. I'm Super Chuffer. It's midnight. It's always midnight. This is your right ear and your left ear. Not going to do anything outrageous to start the stream. Just nice chill start the stream. You can hear me. I'll check you can hear me. 1 2 check Chuffy 1 2. It's midnight. It's always midnight. This is your right ear. Yep. 1 2 check Chuffy 1 2. You can hear me. Big ups in chat. We've got Dover and Dolly's mom, Andy, Nikki, Nicola, Keely, JJ Kane. Shouts out. Doody doody. You can hear me. You're interested in the latest, my opinion on the latest developments. What we'll do is today we're doing Nicola Bulley, the investigation, the independent external review of Lancashire Constabulary's operational response to reported missing person Nicola Bulley. And in the first episode we did the executive summary and the methodology. And today we're going to look at investigation, see how far we get. Probably run an hour and a half, 2 hours on this. Get through the investigation bit for sure, I hope, depending on how many pages it is. And then after that we can jump over to either Battery Exhausted or to Twitch and have a bit of a nutter watch party if you want, if you fancy it. Agreed. So I think I should just get straight into it really, because this is a follow-on from what we've been doing. It will exist in a series of videos, live stream videos, and whilst I kind of feel like, yeah, let's mess about 5-10 minutes at the start, let you all arrive and stuff like that, maybe I should just run right into it. What do you think? Big ups ABC, big ups Jessica, big ups Jetstream. So chapter 1, investigation. We've had the executive summary. This is getting into the actual vegan alternative to meat and potatoes of the thing. I'm going to try and be, you know, I saw you in chat earlier as well, just before I started. Oh, let's have a good laugh, let's have fun. I do like to have a good laugh and fun, and it's a funny one, isn't it? Because this is a topic that's a little bit sensitive and a little bit serious, so I kind of take it a little bit seriously. You didn't get a notification. It's YouTube for you. So I guess I'll take it a little bit seriously, a little bit sensibly. You all good in hood? Yeah, everyone's all good. Can everyone see Scott? Send a super chat to Thank you, Keely. Big ups. If you want to ask me a question today, then send me a super chat. I'll be sending half the money to Paul Ansell. Don't start me. Don't start me. Right, chapter 1, investigation. Early response. On Friday 27th of January 2023 at 11:01, a time that I'm going to write everything down in a notepad from this, and then I'm going to go through and cross-reference everything with timelines another time, but I will be taking notes of these times on the timeline. At 11:01, Lancashire Constabulary received a 999 emergency call from Paul Ansell, who raised concerns for the welfare and safety of his partner, Nicola Bulley. I mean, that already, and you know I'm going to be stopping and picking, and that's my part in this. It's not just a dry read. Big ups, happy days. I still need to check in with that story, Brian Harvey. You know, I still haven't... we chatted the other day, didn't we, about how I remember him from E17, but haven't really caught up with what he's doing today, but still need to keep an eye on that and have a look. Don't know why I got distracted then, sorry. What I was going to say here is that Paul Ansell raised concerns and welfare for the safety of his partner, Nicola Bulley, with a 999 call at 11:01. Now, it isn't easy to get hold of the police on a 101, so I understand that, but it does raise, like, he raised concerns, but it raises a red flag for the level of his concerns. Like, he was very seriously concerned, it seems, to have rung 999 on, you know, if, I don't know, how do I explain this? If someone rang me and said, we found your mom's phone, I suppose I might actually consider ringing the police. We found your mom's phone, we found the dog, but we don't know where your mom is. I probably might ring the police, actually. I probably would be quite worried. So I think that does kind of maybe ring true. But initially, 999, emergency response. What's happened? I don't know. I haven't got down there yet. Like, it does seem a little bit preemptive, but I don't know. Cart before the horse, maybe. Big ups, Happy Days. I'll look into it, yeah. Mr. Ansel had last seen Nicola earlier that morning, preparing to take their 2 children by car to school. Footage recorded by their house's video doorbell supported this. No, it didn't. It's fake. Should have had this prepared. I've been raving about it. Danvers Justice, you know, my favourite video on this channel is the one that completely corroborates what I was saying. But I said it the other episode, I'll say it again. Every time the CCC is brought up, I'll show you this. It completely corroborates what I was saying. It's a cut and shut job. They've cut and shut it, and the way we can completely corroborate it is because this bottom left part of the screen is Nicola Bulley leaving the house with what appears to be a mark on her face, and it's caught in the corner of the wide angle lens. But the actual CCTV that we all saw, that was released by Jizzy True Crime, that had been cropped in, as you can see here. It's been cropped in, and they've lost that bit of the corner, and you can see where some pieces they've, on this original, in inverted commas, image, there's children in the shots. They've blurred them here, but then they've cut and shut them out by cutting something and then moving it over on top. And the whole image is a composite image of lots of different cuts from different, maybe times and days even. We don't know about the original timestamp because it would have been on the bottom, but a new one has been added. It's an absolute, like, it's a sham of a CCTV. Offering. It's diabolical in some ways, because this is really serious stuff that relates to a criminal case, or what could be a criminal case, and tampering with the CCTV like this, I mean, I don't know who, I don't know why, but this is hugely problematic. Ask us in chat there. If you want to ask me and at me, I'll see it quicker. But I wonder if the CCTV that cleared Paul Ansell was in the office or outside the home, says Lucia. We've looked around the home, haven't we? We've looked at the home, and Paul Ansell's office has a webcam but not CCTV, so I'm guessing it's the one outside the house. That's an interesting question as well, though, because it says footage recorded by the house's video doorbell, and as far as I was concerned, like, this annoys me a little bit, because I didn't know they had a video doorbell. The CCTV I'm looking at here, good question, because that's not what I would call a video doorbell. I'd call that maybe a Ring camera if it was, but it's not on the doorbell. It's up on above the garage, which is a non-operational garage, so it sits there up like that and captures the driveway rather than the front door. Andy says, I've sent you some measurements of the river in mods when you get time to look. Thank you. I think, yeah. When it comes up, we'll factor it in, I suppose. I don't know exactly what you mean there, but thanks. Yeah, so the CCTV is a load of rubbish as far as I can see, and if it's that CCTV, then the footage recorded by the house's video doorbell may support it, but I haven't seen that footage. All I've seen is the doctored footage presented by Jizzy True Crime, that Jizzy True Crime had a watermark underneath, then there was the Nicola, then there was the watermark. So Jizzy True Crime has doctored the image and put Nicola on top of her own and watermark, which is impossible. Like, you know, if you watermark an image, it goes on top, the end. Nicola can't walk on top of your watermark. So Jizzy True Crime's got some questions to answer there as well. This footage also corroborated the location of Mr. Ansell that morning, confirming his continued presence at home. Well, that's very strange. Because if you're talking about footage from outside the house, how does it confirm your presence at home? The option is that you could have been seen outside and then returned inside, and that confirms that you're in the house. And then, assuming there's no camera on the front of the house, which I haven't seen there be, maybe he could have left by the front door instead of the side door and then gone out and come back. Like, you would say that a camera confirming his presence at home means that he's on camera in his house, interior, but this is talking about a video doorbell. So the video doorbell does not, in my opinion, corroborate the location of Paul Ansell, confirming his presence at home. Number one, the video doorbell footage appears to have been tampered with. It definitely was fake. The stuff we saw was definitely faked. And then, so we've got this problem. Big ups, people bringing up, Michael Fish bringing up PS Higgs again. I haven't looked into that footy yet. I'm going to do this read through of this. I'm going to do the response from Peter Folding things in order, and then I'll get onto the PS Higgs stuff. So I'm aware of it, but I haven't, things in order basically. But my problem with this is that how would you legitimately prove that you were at home because your video doorbell saw you go back in and then come out later? I don't know if that's enough to really 100% corroborate the location of Mr. Ansell, unless we've got that original video doorbell footage and it's the original stuff and it's not been tampered with, and that corroborates it in that way. Even then, Paul said he quickly changed into his gym kit. I mean, if you're going for a run, I don't know if anyone timed the distance to... People did time the running distance to the distance from the home to the bench. It's runnable in 10 minutes. I mean, I don't know. I think that's a bit... I mean, I'll have to move on from it, but I've stated it as a huge flying red flag there, haven't I? That's their corroboration that he's at home. And it's weird the way they put it in here. Investigation, early response. Like, it's weird the way they arrange their timeline in this document. This is the independent external review, so they're not giving us the evidence to prove it along with the statement. At 11:01, they receive the call, and they've got that evidence. Like, they're not going to be able to include it here, but they've got the evidence of the log of the call, at their end, haven't they? So they can evidentially prove, yes, we logged the call, so I'm going to trust that statement. They, in the methodology, they explicitly said that everything here has been verified, cross-checked, like it is to be considered fact. But the footage recorded by the house's video doorbell supported this. This footage also corroborated the location of Mr. Ansell that morning, confirming his continued presence at home. I have to take it from them that that's corroborated fact, but they're not include. They're like, what I'm trying to say is that it seemed like we were going to go in order of what happened. Early response, right? Paul called the police at 11:01. And then the next item is footage on the doorbell supported this. But in actual fact, in the timeline of events, and this isn't supposed to be a specific timeline, it's just Chapter 1 investigation. But the next step wasn't, right, let's corroborate where Paul was by his CCTV. That wasn't in order. The next step was the police turn up at Paul's house, not at the scene where she went missing, apparently. We'll get to that in a minute. But from what I remember Paul saying, he had to return home. So it would seem that my order of play here would be early response. Paul called the police arrived at Paul's home. Like, that would be like step 2. But instead we've got Paul called the police. Definitely 100% Paul's okay because we checked his doorbell footage at some point. Prior to calling police, Mr. Ansell had been contacted by the school, who informed him that the family dog had been found running loose and distressed by a bench in a field near to the school. Nicola was known to often walk in this field with her dog along the River Wyre. Her mobile phone had also been located on the bench, along with the dog's harness and lead, which were found lying on the ground between the bench and the riverbank. The riverbank at this location is short but steep, with no footholds or handholds. It was normal for Nicola to remove the harness and lead from the dog after entering the field, a point that was contested, but by the by, I suppose, in a way. I mean, not by the by completely, but in a way at this point, we've already discussed those sort of aspects quite a lot, so I'm just going to move through this a little bit. Being contacted by the school, who called whom, and the harness being on the dog are still points of question that have been talked through, like I say. As the dog was still unleashed, this gave an indication that Nicola had not been ready to leave the field. Interesting point. I like it. No one's actually said that, I don't think. I've not heard anyone say that the dog was still off the lead, therefore Nicola was not trying to leave the field. Because right by the bench is the exit to the field, isn't it? So the assumption is that instead of... It's an interesting point. It's a really good... Like, the police report here is... Oh, sorry, the investigation into the police has just raised something that I quite like. I see your question there. How do they know the dogs were distressed? Who said that there? Seaman. Good question. This is all their facts. And like I say, I think that whole thing, the scene at the bench and stuff has been discussed quite a lot. So I'm not going to get too deep into the ifs, whys, and that doesn't quite make senses with that. But we have, and we can. interesting choices of language here, and this to me is the bit that stands out for like as a novel aspect, is the dog was unleashed. This meant Nikki wasn't ready to leave the field. Like, we're to assume if the dog had been put on the lead and she was about to put it on its harness and leave the field and someone got to her, but the idea is that she was not ready to leave the field, therefore at that point she may have been alighting on the bench, maybe. Am I to read into that, or should I not read into things? Following the emergency, Mr. Ansell telephoned the police before making his way to the location to retrieve her items and conduct a search. That's what he said, yes, and that's what he did, according to their call logs. Following the emergency call at 11:01, the incident was initially recorded as a call for concern by the call handler. However, following a review of the information in this initial telephone call by the district response inspector, it was upgraded within 27 minutes and declared as a high-risk missing person. So this stands out. What the process, I don't know, but I know because, I mean, I'll be frank, recently there's been some trolling going on, and some idiots have been going around, like, you know, on the internet, people have been idiots and going around. I've had calls to actually call the police myself and report certain aspects of trolling, and getting on the phone to the police, like, obviously it's not a 999 for me, it's a 101, but getting on the phone to the police is an absolute nightmare. It takes hours and hours, and even though, you know, you think, well, I've called a couple of times, I've spoken to some people, every time it feels like they, you know, opening up the file a new time, and it just, I know that it's difficult. Maybe it's not so difficult up in Lancashire, but the initial telephone call was taken quickly, I suppose because it was 999, and then on the phone they've said, look, it's a 999 call you've made, but you can't find your wife at the park, sorry, not wife, partner, you can't find your partner at the park, and you're not even at the park, so maybe call us back when you got to the park. It doesn't feel as, initially, I can understand why the call handler wouldn't say this is what's the word? The call handler wouldn't say this is a high risk, but then it was upgraded within 27 minutes. So what happens in those 27 minutes? Like, someone, it can't be an automated thing on the computer, because the computer would automatically flag it when you're on the phone. Oh, Nicola Bulley, yes, we've already sent a welfare check round to her. This means it's high risk. Like, this kind of, I question this in my mind a bit. How in 27 minutes did it get upgraded? Like, what's the process behind closed doors? Oh, it's all right, you chuffers. Like, it's not very much reason. You know about it. Like, you know, it's on the battery exhausted side of things. It's no big deal, the trolling and the, you know, having to ring the police, you know, malicious communications and stuff like that. It's just a matter of reporting stuff, isn't it? Because people do stupid things, like, you know, and then the police have had a report of it. It's not like a big deal. Chill. But I don't know what happens in these 27 minutes. They're not telling me. And this is a report into the police, so you'd think that they would enlighten us on that aspect, because that's the whole point of this report. The whole point of this report is not to kind of decide whether, I don't know, as an example, Penny was angry, or like whether Emma White is jealous, like, or anything like that. This report is to decide how the police behaved and what they were up to, and whether that was right, and to assess that. So it seems to me, and obviously we decided that through our looking at it, it's a political report fronted up Andrew Snowden, and, you know, there's a lot of politics involved, political bun fight. Everyone's pulling the covers between him, the police, Peter Folding. Everyone's trying to pull the blanket their way, and Nicola Bulley and her truth is being lost in this a little bit. It's less about what we want to push to the fore is justice for Nicola, and more about making sure that all the different people involved in the grabbing of the cake get a good slice in some ways. And proportion, it said it's not to proportion blame, but, you know, when someone starts a thing off and saying, look, I'm not here to apportion blame, you know, it feels a bit like that. So but 27 minutes declared high risk. What is the process? Why is that not assessed here? Why are we not enlightened to that? This triggered a constabulary response sending out the constables, undertaking prioritised tasks and actions. So we sent the police out. In this 999 call to the police, Mr. Ansell stated that Nicola had been recently suffering from this is quote, suffering from mental health, had been experiencing the menopause and had been suffering from depression. So he said that on the phone. He rang them up and said she'd been okay that morning, nothing untoward, and this is very unlike Nicola, out of character. That's a quote, right? But everyone calls Nicola Nikki. I know we're calling Mr. Ansell here Mr. Ansell, and like, I'm going to start calling him Paul maybe because it's just the way I speak, but I know we're saying that here, but it feels like Nikki in legal language and everything, we're calling her Nicola, but Paul as a quote said Nicola. Is that an actual quote? Because they've quoted him in one inverted comma, but it feels like it's not an actual quote because he would have said Nikki, wouldn't he? I don't know, maybe he said Nicola. This was recorded in the initial call log, which we're not party to. High risk. An authorised professional practice, APP. Everything's got a fucking abbreviation. Authorised professional practice is produced by the College of Policing as the official source of professional practice in policing. The missing persons authorised professional practice states that anyone whose whereabouts cannot be established will be considered as missing until located and their well-being or otherwise confirmed. So, authorised professional practice states if you don't know where someone is, they are missing. How do you know if someone's a missing person? Does it take a certain amount of time, or does it take this? Is it 24 hours before they not turn up and they're missing? No. They're missing if you don't know where they are, full stop. Which is weird because, like, you know, the police don't know where half of us are most of the time, so are we all missing? Hi, says Danvers. Big ups, Danvers. Ring floodlight camera records on movement trigger. Could have been turned off, triggering, allowing people to come in and go. Good point. If it's just that floodlight camera, if it's just that one, then number one, it's not a Ring doorbell camera, like the report says. And number two, then how are you using that to prove that Paul's in the house? Because it doesn't show you the interior of the house. There's also the front door. There's also being able to jump over the fucking fence, if you so choose. If your neighbours aren't in, they're not going to see. You know, it seems very, very strange to me that we're going to officially state that we are 100% comfortable. Because we've all seen the tellies, we've all watched the tellies, you know. We know these things aren't as straightforward as, I mean, I'm being a bit facile there, but, you know, we've all watched Inspector Mort, or, you know, someone could have hoyed over the fence. Don't get me started trying to, you know, this today is not about me filling in the blanks with conspiracy theories or ideas or potential, you know, stuff like that necessarily. But it's more about making sure, I'd say, like, for me, going through this, like, fine-tooth comb and sort of giving it the, okay, that sounds legit, or, oh, I don't know about this, or that's not right, or whatever, you know, picking through this and seeing what I react to. But yeah, that's a really good point, and I can't believe that this is just glossed over in that way, the efficacy of the footage. And apparently they didn't turn up at Paul's within 20 minutes. They turned up at Paul, I don't know exactly how the timeline, apparently they gave 27 minutes before they even declared it high risk. So we're talking about actually I should put that on my timeline. I've got a notepad which you won't see, it's in another document window, but that means, according to this, the Nikki timeline, and this is the CoP report. We've got 11:01 Paul calls the police, and then officially 11:28 it's declared high risk missing person. I mean, also, they haven't told us exactly what was said on that phone call. They've just told us, you know, some of what was said on the phone call. But we're to assume, I suppose, by the tone of what was revealed to us there, that Paul was quite worried and gave them the impression that it was, quite worrying. But it took 27 minutes before anyone else got really worried. And I don't know if that means they forward it up do they forward it up the chain and say, hey, this is really worrying, but officially it's not a missing person. Can you have a look at this, boss? And then 27 minutes later, someone else corroborates that it should be declared high risk and it goes ahead. Or because it seems like because they've done the welfare check, that's the bit that means that they can now declare it high risk missing person. Or, what happened in those 27 minutes is very strange to me. And as you say, they were quick to go to Paul's house, but not quick to search the scene, so to speak. But then again, maybe that's quite sensible, because I do critique the police for not taking Paul as seriously as a suspect. But maybe, listening to him and turning up at a park might not have been the best thing. Maybe turning up at his house is a good idea. I'm a little 50-50 on that. Like, if she's missing in the park and you're trying to find her, great, you've turned up at the park and you've got in the river. But listening to someone like Paul Ansell and therefore jumping in a river might not be the best form of policing, mightn't it? Maybe searching his house, getting the layer, knowing there's been a welfare check at his house. Maybe they were more suspect of Paul initially, and maybe they hoped to. Is that a helicopter going? Could be someone up in a helicopter going over my house, couldn't it? Could be one of those protest removers going over mine. It's interesting. They've moved over that though, and they're on to high risk now. They're sort of covering themselves in the official documentation about risk. So anyone whose whereabouts cannot be established will be considered missing until located. The APP describes that all reports of missing persons sit within a continuum of low risk through to medium risk and high risk. High risk is defined as the risk of serious harm to the subject or the public is assessed as very likely. So they have, within 27 minutes, decided that the risk... I mean, I'm saying there's no harm to the public, yeah? Like, we don't think Nikki's a serious harm to the public. So she must be a serious harm to her subject, the subject herself. What we're saying is, in confusing terminology, that they thought Nikki may have been suicidal. And I'm like, oh, you can't say that word on YouTube or this and that. All right, speaking code then, but like, let's all just get real. The high-risk category almost always requires the immediate deployment of police resources. A member of the senior management team must be involved in the examination of initial lines of inquiry and approval of appropriate staffing levels. So they must examine... So if it's high risk, senior management has got to look into what we're doing and approve the appropriate staffing levels. Give you more people to work on the case. So a high-risk category thing comes in. This is interesting, right? Because a member of the management team must be involved in the examination of the initial lines of inquiry. So for 27 minutes, it's not considered high risk. Then after 27 minutes, the thing goes off in the office somehow that it becomes high risk. And at that point, a member of the senior management team has to examine what you're doing. And what you're doing is sending some people out to Paul to talk at his house. So you were saying, why don't they get in the river? This is why. It's because until the senior management team examine what you're doing, then they say, hang on, there's not enough staff here. Can we get any more people out to go and search the river and do this and do that? It might be that some cases need different amounts of staff, mightn't it? Like, if, for example, there are other locations, they might send a car out to Paul or to the grandparents' house, or, there's other possibilities like that. I'm a little bit surprised myself that whilst I understand that the police attended Paul's house when searching for someone who's missing, I mean, I don't know how it works exactly, but didn't Nicola have friends in other places she might be? And it seems that instead of a number of locations being considered and immediately attended, it was like the park, the home, nothing. Now let's start a big search. But maybe I'm wrong on that. Again, I don't know exactly what went on Do you know what I mean? It's just like she could have been at a friend's house up the road at Marsh Farm Hall. Has anyone checked there? Like, has anyone checked here? Has anyone checked here? Like, it feels like that's the first thing you do when someone goes missing, is you think of places they could go. Oh, they like to go and sit by the river when they're sad. Has anyone checked that? Or they go down the allotment sometimes to see their friend who does the digging. They could be there, you know, or they walk the dog in this other place sometimes. Maybe she went there. You know, there's like other thoughts that you might have instead of definitely. Like, Paul went straight to that one park. Paul, I suppose they found the phone there, didn't they? What am I saying? Being stupid. But, yeah, no, I'm being stupid because the phone and that was there. That was naive of me, what am I saying? It's the park or nothing, isn't it? It's the park or nothing. But yeah, that thought just popped into my mind. I suppose if I were the police, the first thing I would say is, does she have any friends in the area? Does this and that? But then they'd say, look, the phone's on the benches here. The dog's here. It's got to be here, hasn't it? Yeah. And then we, of course, move into that thought space where Paul mentioned the word decoy. This specifics of it being in this one place and the dog being in this one place precluded the search ever investigate. Like, what's the point in going and searching Marsh Farm to see if she turned up there earlier? She didn't. She was at the. I get it. Okay. She did that walk most days, yeah, miscellaneous, and it was part of her routine, which is something that worries me a little bit. Without going too deep into it now, because I've done loads on it, haven't I? But most domestic violence increased massively throughout lockdown. Most people who are murdered by their, who are murdered anyway, are murdered by their partner or someone close to them. And in terms of matricide, is it not matricide? It's not his mother. Like, anyway, in terms of killing your partner, quite often it's the man kills the partner in the home, and like the fact that she's got this routine, it enabled people to either engage with her on the routine maybe, or use the routine to cover up other things that may have happened. You know, she definitely went out. She's going to look for her out there. It's a you know, Paul said it was a decoy. We all know how I wonder about those sort of things, but yeah, I'm letting my mind run away from me a little bit here. I need to get back on the reading. So the risk of serious harm to the subject is assessed as very likely. They were worried about her. The high-risk category almost always requires immediate deployment of police resources, and the senior management decide how many people to send. Such cases should lead to the appointment of an investigating officer and possibly an SIO and a POISA. The volume of missing person incidents recorded by the police is substantial, yeah. The latest data suggests that in 21-22, so that's the latest data because we're in 23 now, but yeah, there were 250,000 missing person incidents recorded nationally, of which 40,000 were graded high risk. Interesting, but not completely pertinent, unless you want to specifically be pertinent to the Lancashire Constabulary, which we're going to do now. The percentage of these incidents resulting in a fatal outcome was 0.35%. For the same period, Lancashire Constabulary recorded 7,500 missing person incidents, of which 1,274 were graded high risk, and there were 40 fatal outcomes. What? Like, this is just some statistics, and they do not... like, they're publishing the stats, but they're not making comment on them. But what they're saying here is that nationally, there is a certain number of incidents. I don't know if it feels like a big number or a small number, because there's 70 million people in the UK, okay? But of which 40,000 were graded high risk is a small number, if you think about it. How in a year, 40,000 high risk missing persons is a relatively small number compared with other crimes, right? The percentage of these incidents resulting in a fatal outcome was 0.35%. I kind of want to get the calculator out, but what they're saying is not very many. Yeah, it will have a numerical value and it will be bigger than you think, but not very many. I feel like I need to get the calculator out on this a little bit though. Okay, so quickly, and if anyone's quicker than me, calculator, I'll bow to your mathematical abilities, but I'm just going to round some numbers as well, though. 40,000 and 0.35%. So I've got 40,000 And divide it by 100 gives me 1%, yeah? That's 1%. And then I want 0.35 of that. Maths. Oh, it's like a third anyway, isn't it? 0.35. It's like a third. So divide that by 3 is 133 cases. Yeah. 133 cases. That's not the important number though. Like it's 133 fatal cases in a year nationally, right? But that's not the important number. The important number here is 7575. Might as well go accurate. 7575 cases in Lancashire. And 40 fatal outcomes. Wait. Graded high risk. Wait, I'm getting this right. Get this right. I'm doing the percentage of these incidents. Wait, am I getting this right? Of which 40,000 were graded high risk. The percentage of these incidents resulting in a fatal outcome was 0.35%. Do they mean percentage of total or percentage of high risk? This is annoying now. You're not even making it very clear. Nationally, there was 250,000. 40,000 were graded high risk. The percentage of these incidents resulting in a fatal outcome was 0.35. Are we talking about the percentage? I'm going to have to do both, I suppose, to give you an accurate, answer now. But they don't specify the percentage of which incidents. The high risk ones or simply the missing persons. I think they mean the high risk ones. Anyway, look, 1,274 high risk in. We'll do the first. We'll do it the way I think it is, and then we'll do the other one as well. 1,274 in Lancashire. Yeah. Lancashire Constabulary 1274. There were 40 fatal outcomes. 40 fatal outcomes. So let's divide that by 100 to find out our 1% is 12, is 1%. And then there were 40. So like it's not going to be a round integer, but we're going to times that by 4 to get our 40, yeah? Well, that's 50. But we're talking about like 4, hang on. My brain's gone wrong. What I want to know is what 40 fatal outcomes looks at as a percentage of 1,000. Alexa, what's 40 as a percentage of 1,000?
40 is 4% of 1,000.
Thanks. It's just easier like that, isn't it? My point is, it's supposed to be at 0.35 nationally. And at Lancashire, you're like at 4%. That's like lots more. It's like 5 or 10 times. And if it's out of the whole big figure, then it would be, Alexa, what's 40 as a percent of 7,500?
40 is 0.5333% of 7,500.
Okay, and if it was that, it's still double it almost, 7.3, 0.3, 0.5. It's still a lot more. So what's hidden in this statistics, which I wasn't quick enough to do. Listen, I got an A star for my GCSE maths, but I haven't done statistics for a long time. But what's the point here is I'm happy to make, and I'm pretty sure I'm making it, is that the national level of missing persons and fatal missing persons is a lot lower than the level than in Lancashire. And it's just clearly stated there, not very clearly in figures. By 11:27, a police response car with 2 officers was deployed to meet with Mr. Ansler's first respondents. Okay, I'm going to put that in my timeline, but it doesn't fit already because at 11:28 it was declared a high-risk missing person. At 11:27, the police car, 2 officers was deployed. So the police car was deployed 1 minute before it was declared a high risk. It's a bit weird. An officer was also designated as the dedicated missing person search manager. Like, they did all this 1 minute before they decided it was high risk, according to this report. This role provides a 24/7 response to triage and coordinate a search for the missing person based on the circumstances of the disappearance. So what you're saying is that if someone's missing, you get a dedicated missing person's manager. I don't know if that's in office or one of the respondents counts as this, but you're saying that at any point during this, you can call them up and they're going to help you to search. They're going to organise this. Triage is what I would recognise as a medical term for like early assessment, rather than actually doing a job on something. Preliminary assessment of patients and casualties in order to determine the urgency of their need for treatment. So triage, in this context, conducts a preliminary assessment. So you've got someone that you can talk to that will assess and coordinate a search, but not actually conduct the search. So I think this is like, you know, you're looking for someone, you can ring them up and say, oh, I think they might have gone over to the building site maybe. They were talking about going there last Tuesday. And this person can say, okay, as triage, I will assess and determine whether I think this is urgent. The building site's very dangerous. Maybe we should get someone out there. And I need someone with a hard hat. So I'm going to, you know, coordinate who's going to go out there. So I'm saying that's an office-based person. And as it's a 24/7 role, it can't be that you're relying on somebody that's going to answer their phone 24/7. It must be a role that is a role for, like, there's a role here rather than an individual. So I get on the phone to a missing person search manager, but that missing person search manager might go home, have their dinner, and I'd still get on the phone to a missing search manager. It's a different person in the same role. So the role exists, but individuals may come and go within that role. It's based on the circumstances of the disappearance. They also act as a single point of expertise, direction, and experienced oversight, which is their job as a triage and coordination. So I don't know how they also act as that, because that's their first... that's the first part of their job. Interesting you mentioned Emma in that chat there. The role they're describing there is a bit like what Emma, the sort of role. Emma was also quite communications based, wasn't she? But she provided that sort of coordinated search role as a volunteer as well. The initial response was overseen by a local chief inspector, which is... sounds big, like we got the chief inspector on that, but also it's states here, doesn't it, that they should appoint an investigating officer, an SIO, and a member of the senior management team must be involved in the examination of initial lines of inquiry. So they've initially chosen the senior management, and that is the chief inspector, a local chief inspector. So that I would think sounds about right, a senior management role. I don't know how high up things go. I don't know about the police hierarchy and whether that's normal, but a chief inspector as a senior, okay. A significant number of multi-agency resources were deployed that morning in support of the uniformed local response. A significant number, we don't know what that means. You could be trying to make it sound good. Oh, I did a significant number of haircuts today. I did 2. Or I did a significant number. I had 22 and I can't fit any more in. It's just a random word. So I don't know why you put a significant number instead of specifying, because you know exactly how many, don't you? A significant number of multi-agency resources. So it's just marketing language. We had this in the first one, in the overview, in the executive summary, and I expect it from the executives, but a significant number of multi-agency resources means like what? The firemen, they deployed them that morning, the same morning, in support of the uniformed local response. And the morning as well, you're talking about, this is weird because this is official document, okay? At 11:28, it was declared high risk. You've got half an hour to deploy those significant multi-agency resources. You've got half an hour to deploy a significant number of multi-agency resources before you would officially consider it the afternoon. You know, this is an official document looking at the police's response. So you can't have, well, it's the morning, but it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but we're going to call it the morning because it's around about the time it happened. Like, you need to be pretty clear about this sort of stuff. So I'm surprised that they're not listing the actual agencies and the times they were deployed and how they were contacted and how they are deemed to be deployed, like what that means. Like, that's just a real brief sort of, yeah, we did a big, we got loads of people involved. They were there that morning in support. These resources were coordinated by the Missing Person Search Manager, providing specialist direction and expertise. His Majesty's Coast Guard was contacted and further specialist support services were deployed, consisting of. So now the timeline's fucked as well a bit, because you said a significant number. Big ups Paul Taylor. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Did we get that email in to the mods squad? I think we did, didn't we? We'll be checking. Excuse me. I came on stream before I went on the Discord today. Like, what's annoying me here a little bit is it says a significant number of multi-agency resources were deployed that morning. And then it says these resources were coordinated by Missing Person Search Manager, providing specialist direction and expertise, which is what's supposed to be happening. That's their job. And then it says His Majesty's Coast Guard was contacted and further specialist support services were deployed. And further, so the Coast Guard was contacted and further support services were deployed. When? Because underneath this it says by 1442 an underwater thermal camera had been deployed. So my guess is, from what they're trying to say, but they're not actually saying, okay? Not actually saying. Big ups Happy Days. Maybe we'll have a look at that after this on Battery Exhausted. That'll be fun. Or I might do it on Twitch, actually. I might just like dip out to Twitch after this and chill. But yeah, the initial response was overseen by local chief inspector, blah, blah. But like, are you saying that all of these people were contacted and involved within the first half? You've got a half-hour window, bear in mind, before it becomes the afternoon. And you're saying that they were deployed that morning. A significant number deployed that morning. So officially, and this is officially on the independent external review, we are saying that within half an hour we called out the dog team, the drone team, the whatever the POISAs are, okay, I can't remember, Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, the Swift Water Team, the Bowland Pennine Mountain Rescue Team, the Lancashire Air Search and Rescue, National Police Air Service, and North West Police Underwater Search and Marine Unit, which have also got an acronym, which is NUWAPSUMUA. Maybe, yeah. I mean, you can get on the blower to the fire and rescue real easy. That probably automatically tickers through to their end with a missing person. The Bowland Pennine Mountain Rescue Team deployed. I'm saying this happened later, some of this, than that morning. But they're saying by 1442, an underwater thermal camera had been deployed to search the river wire close to the bench area, but with no trace of Nicola. Now, this is a real point of contention, because the Lancashire Constabulary Drone Team is not a long-running arm of the police, is it? You know, my granddad didn't work on the Lancashire Constabulary Drone Team, did he? It's a fairly new thing. And you know where that's come from and where that's going and what goes on with that is it's this man, Andrew Snowden. He pumped and pushed, like, you know, you've got the government budget, you've got the elected, he is elected, crime commissioner from the Tory party, and they're putting police money into drones. Those drones need manufacturing. Someone's got a contract for producing expensive drones, and you can damn well bet that there's some posh chuffer who, you know, is friends with some chuffer in the, you know what I'm saying? So, like, the money's being filtered into this drone project, and you need to prove that the drone project is worth doing, don't you? Like, you absolutely need to have those drones. Like, there's no point in spending loads of money on expensive drones and underfoot. Like, the idea is we don't need as many police people walking around and doing their job, because we've got drones. Essentially, robots are taking their jobs. So the police people might not be so happy with the drones, or they might really like having drones to use. Bit of both, okay? Bit of both. There's politics involved, Obviously, drones are really useful in policing. They probably enjoy using them. Got it, yeah, bit of both. But Andrew Snowden has sort of pinned his flag on his mast a little bit. And I'm thanking or you might call them addendum, for highlighting this way back. But Andrew Snowden, like, he's pro drones. Let's say that he's pro drones. I don't know who gets the money and what kind of, where the money goes exactly. I'm just saying my thing a bit off the cuff, so it's my opinion. But drones, Snowden, yeah. And so you're going out with the drone team in the water to find someone, where before you may have, and it was mentioned in chat, wasn't it? Divers, expensive response. I think this is probably an opportunity for the drone team to stand out and shine. Is it not? All these other agencies are going out now. The Bowland Pennine Rescue Mountain team are going to go on, you'd think on foot around in the area. But if you can fly your drone over and just find her, bang, done. And that's the underwater thermal camera. It may have been that the underwater thermal camera, and we don't know, I don't know, it may have been on a stick. But I'm thinking if you've got an underwater drone, it could be attached to a drone. But I'm thinking it all comes under that same banner of modern technology. And modern technology does not necessarily come cheap, and the police don't produce it themselves. They pay other people to give them the technology, and so they can use the technology, yeah? Which is kind of cool, because, that's how modern policing works, I guess. But you've also got to be careful about who's supplying it, how much money they stand to make, whether policing standards are undermined by the handing over of the policing to robots, essentially, or whether it completely supports them. It's a much wider and more interesting political conversation. And, you can move into the conversation about artificial intelligence. It's a much more modern and wider political conversation, but it is political and it is policing, and I don't have all the answers to that. But Snowden's got his finger right in that pie. So I would argue that the deployment of the drones, whether that's just the air drones or whether it's the underwater drones, let me just quickly see if I can get this. Andrew Snowden underwater drone. Well, it's coming up with all this stuff, so I don't really want to be going into that right now. Underwater. Okay, nothing quick came up. But I'm basically saying that there's an opportunity here for Andrew Snowden's new robotic toys to come to the fore and to help reduce the number of man hours required for this search. Man, woman, not sexist, just it's a phrase, isn't it? But reduce the number of hours that people need to search for. But it didn't happen that way. And maybe Andrew Snowden's not happy with that. But yeah, he's commissioned this report anyway. By 1442, an underwater thermal camera had been deployed to search the river wire close to the bench area, but with no trace of Nicola. It's also important to note that if it's a thermal camera and it's 1442, so that's going on my thing, 1442 thermal camera, 1442 thermal camera in water, close to the bench area. Is it possible that she wasn't at that area? Is it possible that by that time, I mean, this is sad and it's brutal, but she would be cold? Or is it still possible to locate her? Is there a window of time that it takes for the body to cool? How much can that thermal camera see? Is it just thermals, or can it see the riverbed itself and whether it's been trodden on? And a big question I've had from creeping in the back of my mind is, with that wonderful sonar images, could you have not seen someone's footprints down the... It looked like you could have seen someone's footprints down the middle of the river, and someone had been struggling about in the river and stuff. Could you see like a pattern leading up to what might seem like a dive site? Could the underwater camera have seen that sort of disturbance on the riverbed or not? But the camera was deployed, and we're to assume that nothing was seen because, the specialist support services deployed to the scene were directed to work according to the most likely theory, hypothesis. And my hypothesis is in brackets there, like we all know what the words mean, thanks. As documented by the POISA lead having assessed the initial information, there can be considered to be 4 categories of missing person: ill or injured, lost persons, voluntarily gone missing, or under the influence of a third party. That's interesting, isn't it? Influence of a third party does not mean abducted, but it could mean someone convinced you to go out and you told you maybe you should do this and convinced you to, like, under the influence of a third party, and you're sort of going along with someone else's direction, but you're not physically, you know, it's interesting, that is, isn't it? There can be considered 4 categories of missing person: ill or injured, lost, voluntarily gone missing, or under the influence of a third party. Either you walked off and you don't want to be found so no one knows where you are, or someone's convinced you to go off and no one knows where you are and people are worried about you, or you don't know where you are and you've got wandered off and no one knows where you are and they're worried about you, or you are unable to contact people because you're poorless, or you fell over, or you're, you know, injured, or you're in the water. So, you know, in this case, they're going to lean on that, aren't they? But I suppose influence of the third party could also, I don't know about this because it's like legal terms, but it could also cover abduction and other things, couldn't it? Because whilst they would, I'm saying because it didn't list a crime, we're saying missing is not a crime. Like abduction is different to missing. Yeah, but maybe influence of a third party could move into that area where it could be a crime. From the outset, the working hypothesis, or theory, is that provisionally accepted as the basis for a theory that is provisionally accepted for the basis of further research, but may be subject to change. For this search was categorized. So what they're saying here is that from the start, we have one idea that we're going to go with, but we could change that idea. It's just the working idea, okay? It's not set in stone. For this search, missing persons who are ill or injured. These persons who do not want to be missing but have suffered some kind of injury or illness that's resulted in them not completing a journey and subsequently reported as missing. They're saying that she may have unalived herself, to use the internet term, but they're also, you know, ill or injured is not ruling out that somebody else or something accidental happened, is it? So it's interesting, they're not saying she got lost. This is what's standing out, you know, is what they're telling us. The police didn't think she got lost. They didn't think she deliberately went off as well. They ruled that out. They didn't rule it out. They said the main thing that we're going to focus on, but we still can't completely rule out. But it's interesting because you could have maybe said she maybe have chosen to wander off, but they would have said the dog, the phone. No, she didn't. And a third party, they've decided not as the main idea. The influence of the third party. She's ill or injured. It's not that someone's convinced her to wander off. The POISA lead also documented that the 2 other categories, third party involvement and the missing person voluntarily going missing, were not discounted. These categories were acknowledged as part of the search strategy from the outset. However, inquiries conducted by the investigation team did not provide any information or intelligence placing Nicola into one of these other categories. All searches were based on the working hypothesis that Nicola was ill or injured and likely to have fallen into the river. The searches conducted also covered the adjacent land areas to the river in order to encompass less likely hypotheses such as body deposition or suicide. But the river isn't considered a body deposition or suicide. Or maybe it also is. And inquiries did not provide any information or intelligence placing Nicola into one of the other categories. The other categories being like, this doesn't make sense to me, okay? So, right, this is where things don't make sense to me, is if you inquired about Nicola and you are the police, then you've got a listed welfare check. And a listed welfare check waves a red flag for her potentially wanting to go missing herself voluntarily. and it also the third party. So that would, in my mind, provide information or intelligence to place her into one of the other categories. It would be okay if you said it provided some information, but we decided to lean on missing, ill, or, but instead they're saying our investigation did not provide any information or intelligence, to place her into one of the other categories. So they're basically saying it's not fair to point the finger at the police and say that Nicola could have been third-partied, because we didn't find any information to provide us with that idea, so we couldn't even look that way. We had to, at the moment, she's missing. We're not saying it's third party because no evidence. But they didn't say evidence, they said information or intelligence. So information and intelligence is things people tell them, isn't it? Things they learn. So Paul Ansell didn't place her into one of the other categories because they spoke to him on the day. We're talking about, I still think, assuming the way this is written, that we're talking about in this early part of the investigation, the POISA lead documenting the categories in this. This is at the start. They're talking to Paul, they're making up their mind, it's all happening, and they've decided that she's not likely to have been third-partied because there's no information, there's not any information or intelligence placing her into one of the other categories. But deliberately going off on your own, I know that the phone is there and the dog is there, so you're going to say she didn't go off on her own. She didn't just decide to leave that and just walk off and start a new life, did she? But you could argue that she may have been considering doing that because there was a welfare check. Like, any intelligence that places her into one of the other categories, any intelligence. But no, there was none. All the searches were based on the hypothesis she was ill or injured. It's good that you cover the adjacent land areas. Yeah, I get that. It's good that you do that. But all of the searches were based on the hypothesis that Nicola was ill or injured. That is to say, we did not search at Nicola's house for any evidence because we're concerned that she's ill or injured out on the dog walk somewhere. I mean, I think ill or injured, in inverted commas, like, reading between the lines, means in the river, doesn't it? Fell in the river by mistake. Because that's what of course... If at the early stage, this is interesting. If at the early stage you're saying she's in the river, I think, and ill or injured, she might have fallen in the river and drowned, then when it comes out in the inquest, that's what happened. You look quite good because you were right on the money straight away. In fact, you were searching that way because you wanted to do your best. Like, it's surprising you didn't find her because you were 100% sure that's what happened and that's what happened. So it's really weird that you didn't find her because you were right on the money there. And a bit frustrating for all those armchair detectives because you didn't bother. I say frustrating, maybe good for all the armchair detectives because they didn't bother to do any sort of criminal they didn't bother to investigate any potential criminal behaviour or any of the other options potentially. In fact, yeah, they say they cover their back by saying, look, there could have been all these different things that had happened. She could have been ill, she could have got lost, she could have voluntarily gone missing, or the third party thing. I'm going to start calling that, it might not be legal language, but being third partied, but that could have happened. And we did check that out. We did think it might be a possible, we documented the other two categories. They were not discounted. They were acknowledged as part of the strategy. But because we couldn't find any information or intelligence, whilst they're acknowledged as part of the strategy, should we treat this as a potential sus one where we go and investigate the house and the partner? Let's strategize. Should we treat this like that? I don't know if we should, Why not? Well, we haven't got any information that says that. We haven't got any, really? I mean, it's on the list of all that we've got. There's 4 different. We're going to go with one. We're just going to say one. But We're strategizing about it, though. We're considering it in the strategy room. Yeah. But we're not going to send anyone out to conduct inquiries along those lines, third partying and stuff like that. No. We're considering it in the strategy room. Yeah. But out on the ground when we're actually going and doing things, it won't be part of anything. No. So what about the searches? Like, are the searches going to be based on just the hypothesis that she was in the river, or are we going to search with any other kind of hypothesis in mind? Just the one hypothesis for the searches. We could see. Where's the button? Hang on. Ah, my buttons. We're considering in the room here, in the strategy room, we're considering searching on the basis that she might have been third partied. Oh, we'll consider searching like that. Yeah, we'll consider it. Are we going to do it? Should we go and do it? Do you want to go and do it? Which one am I now? No, they're not going to. All searches were based on the hypothesis that she was ill or injured and likely to have fallen in the river. All searches were based on the hypothesis that she was ill or injured and likely to have fallen in the river. The searches also covered the adjacent land areas, just so you know, anywhere in that land area, anywhere in the river, if she's done herself over, done herself in, or just come to an accidental death, and she's in that park or in that river, that's what we're thinking, that's what we're looking for. So any other evidence around on the day, any other, if she dropped something down by the road, we don't care because we're not searching by the road. We're searching over here by the river and in the park and the adjacent land. I don't know how far the adjacent land is, whether they would have searched her route to the school and back, but this doesn't actually state that. Ill or injured could mean the route to the school or back, but it says adjacent land areas to the river and the river. So it's interesting because at the very start we were looking on those maps. One of my first episodes on Nikki Bulley was 11 facts. Check out the Super Chuffer. You're watching the Super Chuffer, and if you've not watched this before, why haven't you subscribed? What is wrong with you? It's only a click of a thumb. It's only a thumb click, and if you don't like it, then you unsubscribe later and tetchy. But you're watching the Super Chuffer. So this is the Super Chuffer, and if you really want to find a particular video, you can press search there, and you can type it in. But I've got playlists. So Nikki Bulley's got its own playlist, hasn't it? So on the first video on the playlist is 11 facts. That was the first thing that I did, is I watched Paul Ansell's interview. Big ups Paul Taylor, follow frame. Sounds of Screams, is that official? Yeah, the Screams, they came into the inquest, but they can't necessarily have been brought into the early searches because no one cared to search for that sort of stuff, it seems, because we're definitely looking for someone who's ill and injured. In 11 facts, I should actually rename that Paul Ansell interview, body language, and 11 facts, because I looked at Paul Ansell's Riverside, look at him smiling, I looked at his Riverside interview, and then there was an article with one of her friends stating 11 facts about it all. What was I even saying? I got confused with myself now. Adjacent land areas. Just shouting out for myself anyway. Go and watch 11 Facts. There's something in that that's pertinent to this, but I can't remember now because my brain just broke. All searches were based on the hypothesis she was ill or injured, likely to fall in the river. Searches also covered the adjacent land areas, but did not, in my opinion, therefore, cover... I mean, you're not like her phone and the dog are at the bench, so it's like her phone and the dog are there. We're going to start. It's like there's the epicenter, and we're going to radiate out from there, I guess. And I understand that, but watching Paul's interview, his use of the word decoy, his actual statement that he thought that the dog and the phone were a decoy and placed down there, which is what I kind of think as well. I never was 100% sure that she was in that field. We've got the eyewitnesses. But now we've got apparently people who saw her at the school and had a good old conversation with her. But I've always questioned it and I've always been wary of it. But it's interesting here that... I mean, yeah, the interesting point here is that the search is looking for someone in the river who's been poorly or whatever. It's not looking for anything else wider than or outside of, or indeed anything criminal or okay, so what they're gonna say their conclusions here, but what I'm gonna conclude from that is that I always said the opportunity to turn things into a crime scene, to investigate as a criminal matter, to automatically assume Paul is like, how did they know that Paul was innocent at this stage within half an hour? It doesn't make sense to me. In order for there to be no hypothesis of influence of third party, none at all. We considered it, but we're not going to search for it. Like, we considered it and we decided it's not. We've got the main hypothesis, but I get that. But no search at all. No search at all for the other hypotheses. Like, you've got one working hypothesis, so you're going to, but none at all for the other hypotheses. And they're written out because Paul Ansell's CCTV proves, you said in the report, that the police, his doorbell supported it. That CCTV that morning, the doorbell supported it. So I have to conclude myself that the reason that Paul Ansell was declared innocent and the search focused on the ill and all that, if the doorbell is the proof, is that the police that entered the home that morning said to Paul, "Can we see your CCTV camera?" And he said yes, and they watched it on the screen. And that they noted when Paul was in and then when he came out. And they reported that back, and they assessed that in the office within the half hour or something. I find it all a bit weird. I don't know what you do as a police person to completely rule out Paul Ansell within that first half hour. But apparently they did. To the point where there was no point in even conducting any search at Nicola's house. I mean, when someone goes missing, I don't care where your phone is or where your dog is. If you go missing, you might want to check where they live. Like, they might in some way have ended up back home. Like, they did go to the house there to check, to start their conversation with Paul. From everything we can understand, they went to Paul's house first, didn't they? Nikki's house. But, I mean, we're not told here if they had a good look around the house. There's like lots of information we're sort of missing, in a way, in that aspect of it. Conclusions. The initial grading of the emergency call made by Mr. Ansell was quickly and correctly reviewed, assessed and categorised as high risk by Lancashire Constabulary in line with the Constabulary's and national policy guidelines. We did well. The police did well. Well done. Within half an hour, you'd had it as serious. There was effective supervisory oversight at the correct levels for the early assessment and appropriate deployment of relevant resourcing and skills. We had the right people on the job and they did the right things. The early reassessment of the initial call grading is particularly commendable. Initially, we weren't going to call it high risk, and that could have come back to bite us. But it turns out that no, we did call it high risk after all. And I think they kind of did, because they sent loads of people out to look for her. So we did call it high risk, and we can have a pat on the back. The development of, I say we, this is an independent report telling the police you can have a pat on the head for that. The deployment of specialist support services was comprehensive and effectively mobilised, making the initial policing response of a high standard. So not only do you get a pat on the head, you get a biscuit now. The incident had further additional oversight and scrutiny through a later management review meeting, which had that's a conclusion, but it wasn't stated here. Hang on, wait, have I got into conclusions too quick? Later that day, Nicola's disappearance was further reviewed at a senior management meeting. So this is the meeting, chaired by a chief inspector. Searches were concluded at 7 o'clock 1900 hours due to health and safety concerns. It got dark, as well as challenges posed by searching in darkness. The priority search area for the following day would focus on the river. They decided if we didn't find her today, she's probably dead, and we're going to focus on the river tomorrow. So that was a senior management meeting chaired by the chief inspector. I can believe that, yeah. Later that day, the disappearance was reviewed at a management meeting. Searches were concluded at 7 o'clock. So the incident had further additional oversight and scrutiny through a later management review meeting. At the end of the day, we told the boss what we'd been doing, and the boss looked at what we'd been doing. Yeah. The initial response to a high-risk missing person inquiry, especially the use and deployment of a missing persons search manager, was highly commendable. All forces should consider adopting this approach. So you did a really good job. The missing person search manager was a good idea. More bureaucracy, but yeah. Like if you don't have a search manager, I don't know why you're even conducting a search without some management of it. It just seems bizarre, but yeah, a pat on the head and a biscuit for that. All forces should have a missing person search manager. Pat on the head, I suppose. Good job. Well done. Not mention the fact that, okay, we didn't find her, so that's a bit of a negative. The conclusions there didn't... in a way, I would think maybe if I'm reviewing the police's response, saying, look, you get a big pat on the head, but there's certain aspects of a search that... I mean, it's not your fault, but we could mention that, didn't manage to find her or turn up any other evidence whatsoever. Left it a bit of a question mark on the old, wonder what's going on there. But, okay. Early investigation. On Saturday 28th of January at 8 o'clock, an on-call SIO formed the view this was an unusual case. What? I'm going to have to copy and paste that into my timeline, but what the fuck does it even mean? I love the way they write these things. It's like you have to go through it with your brain and then unpack it and try and work it out. It's like an investigation. It's like a puzzle in itself, isn't it? It's what they're trying to do, is it? They're trying, for all the armchair detectives out there, they're trying to make this a sort of puzzle in itself. On Saturday, 28th of Jan, so that's the next day, at 8 in the morning, the on-call SIO, what's on-call mean? It means you're a policeman on call, like who can be called up, like, a fireman on call, or does it, an experienced detective superintendent, so an experienced police person, formed the view this was an unusual case. I think this is a bit of an unusual case. Put that in the logbook, 800 exact. Did they come into work on Saturday, 8 in the morning, first thing in the morning? Arrived on shift. Bang, this is an unusual case. I've been thinking about this. Or had they been up on it all night? And this is their sign out at the end of put it in the book. I'd also like to point out the Nicola Bulley case is an unusual case. Good night, boss. Like, it's just a really fucking weird thing. And it points the finger at obviously they're not going to outline someone's name and an individual or anything, but it points the finger at like one officer. So initially we've had the whole initial response and it was great. Everyone's had a biscuit. Everyone's got a pat on the head. They haven't found her. She's still missing, but initially they're like, this is really good. We've done a good job here. Well done. Then the next day someone came into the office and said, hang on a minute, everyone. I think this one's a bit of an unusual case. They carefully assessed the risk and allocated resources appropriately, including an experienced detective inspector as the investigating officer. The risk. Assessed the risk. They carefully assessed the risk. To whom? And allocated resources appropriately, including an experienced detective inspector as the investigating officer. Now, this is so interesting because the resources have been appropriately allocated. They include the dog unit, the drone team, the POISAs, the fire and rescue, the swift water team, the Bowland Pennine Rescue Mountain Team, the Lancashire Air Search and Rescue, the Police Air Service, and the North West Police Underwater Search and Marine Unit. So there's been a lot of resource allocation already, yeah? But someone's come into the office the next day, an experienced detective superintendent. I'm thinking they came in the morning on Saturday and said, listen, you, I'm putting an experienced detective inspector on this because the risk here, not just to Nicola Bullis, but, you know, the risk, I'm just going to leave that open. I'm not going to actually, like, state clearly what I think the risk means, but the risk to whom? The risk is great. So I'm putting an experienced, like, it's like someone's come in on Saturday morning and said, you're off the case. Like, I imagine it like a TV show, so I'm obviously dramatising this a bit too much, but, you know, you're off the case, McNulty. I'm putting Bunk on the case, and he's going to, DCI Bunk is going to take over, because you ain't fucking this one up for the department, McNulty. You know? Like, we need and like, you wonder about the experienced investigating officer, whether they're doing shady things behind the scene. On the telly you do. Whether they're doing, you know, I've been pushed off the big case. I was getting too close to the truth, or something like that, you know. But obviously they're not getting too close to the truth. That's the problem. So they've, like, because they've not found her or nothing. Maybe that, like, but they've bumped the, like, there must have already been, like, this is an unusual case. We've allocated some more resources, including an experienced detective inspector as the investigating officer. So whoever was on, I don't know if there was already an investigating officer that was, like, you know, considered the most experienced on this case, but they've been, maybe they didn't, maybe they said it's just a missing person, send the new recruit. But now the new recruit has been bumped off. I'm just making dramatise, but the experienced detective, like, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, experienced detective investigator on. Responsibility for the investigation lay with this SIO, who confirmed and agreed the high-risk categorisation. So the next day, at 8 in the morning, this becomes a bit more serious in the office. In the office, it does. You know, more important people are brought in to do a better job. Politics inside the office of the police has been, you know, shifting in some way. It's interesting, this is. It is Lancashire Constabulary's missing from home policy to ensure that a major force investigation team, FMIT, like, stop it with the abbreviations now, it's starting to annoy me. It's Lancashire Constabulary's missing from home, MFH policy, to ensure that a major investigation team, FMIT, review is conducted of any high-risk investigation within 24 hours and daily thereafter. With the available investigation team resources allocated to an emerging firearms incident, the SIO took responsibility to investigate. So it's interesting because there was a conspiracy underground vibe, you know, thing going on about a major search that took place a couple of days before Nicola Bulley's disappearance, just slightly up the road. And I would guess that's the firearms incident, because they were digging around in the woods nearby a few days before. You know, don't quote me on this because I haven't got my exact paperwork out to, you know, factually verify it for you, but I'm pretty sure I remember there being a bit of an underground, oh, what's this the police were doing. It seems they've got a firearms incident. It could just be a farmer left a shotgun on the tractor and a kid, you know, shot a cow. Or it could be that the, you know, firearms incident could be a load of proper serious gangster stuff. Like, there aren't many people running around with firearms. That's drug gangs and gangster stuff, isn't it? So, unless it's like, you know, just a randomer. But you would think if it was a randomer, like, farmer left his shotgun out and someone got hold of it, or like some kid got an air gun and, you know, went to the school or something weird, like, you know, that wouldn't necessarily be like an emerging firearms incident, and we would have heard about it, and it wouldn't have required so much MFH investigation and investigation team. It would be easy to investigate because it'd be a random one-off incident. So I'm guessing as well, requiring a lot of investigation, either you pulled someone over and they've got a load of guns, or you find a load of guns, or someone tips you off about a load of guns, and you've got to then investigate the guns and stuff like that. So it's interesting that's going on behind the scenes in the days leading up to Nicola Bulley's death, and it distracts the police and takes away what seems like their better, more important investigation. Or it seems like the top team are working on the guns. So the SIO took responsibility to review the investigative process. Prioritised inquiries included securing detailed evidential accounts of key witnesses who had already been identified, the review and telephony and digital examination of Nicola's mobile telephone, securing CCTV footage from Nicola's home address. How is that? I thought that had already been done. Well, they can't have well, this is great. So the police don't, on Saturday morning, when this new chuffer comes in and says, like, I'm going to call this new chuffer, do I want to give them names? DCI Bunk and DCI, but this new chuffer, right, is coming, taking over and says, I want you to go out and get me and all those witnesses who said they saw her. And that will include Penny, I want to call him Ron, but it's not actually his name, is it? All the people, the eyewitness accounts probably aren't as thick and many at that moment. I can't remember exactly when the eyewitnesses started to, come in and state their truths. I haven't got my full timeline open for the old, to be honest, I don't rely heavily. We did an episode about it, and it's called What is Evidence, and it is on the playlist as well. Nicola Bulley, What is Evidence? That covers what I think of in eyewitnesses, which is that they're unreliable. But obviously you've got a list of witnesses, and this new chuffer that comes on says, right, I want you to go and get proper evidence from these witnesses. So it's not just we had this on my notebook says that someone said they saw her and that. I need you to go out and get it in writing. They sign it, you go through it, proper evidence, witness account. And it's that process that debunks a lot of the people that's where we have the big up to Avon Barksdale. This is what we have the there's an altercation on the path. What is there or isn't there? Let's go and follow it up and get someone to write it down on a piece of paper and sign it. So I like to think that the witnesses who are unreliable, they came in the wash, so to speak. They didn't come good because the police went and said, did you definitely see her? And they said, yeah, I'm sure I saw her, and I'm not really sure now though, but let me check my phone records. Oh, it turns out I was there an hour later than I thought I was, or stuff like that. The police go and secure detailed evidential accounts, and the key witnesses either hold up or don't, and are discounted. And that's where some witnesses, oh, what about this person who said they saw her and then didn't, and this and that. Some of them don't come up to verification, and that's what police do when they follow up on these key witnesses. But I'm also a bit worried that securing evidential accounts of key witnesses who have been identified may mean that someone could come forward as a witness, be identified, and then when it comes to securing evidential accounts, they might step back. We want to come around your house and just write down exactly what you said about this lady you saw on the dog walk and get you to sign it. I don't know about that, actually. I was only trying to help. I don't want to get involved, or fuck, the police are coming and I'm going to have to be giving witness testimony in this thing, and I don't want to because I know too much. I don't know, but some people decided not to follow up on their early witness account because we know that, because or at least their early account, their witness account, when followed up by the police, was decided not to be taken and put in the investigation as a truth because they did this part, which is good and bad. Well, it's good. It's obviously good, but it's worrying that some witnesses didn't. You would hope that the witnesses who were there initially and said their initial testimony early, then were followed up on and came good in the wash, instead of not. So some of them didn't, but yeah. The review of telephony and digital examination of Nicola's mobile telephone, which means get her phone and send it to the forensics lab, yeah? Prioritised inquiries included. So priority to get a phone, probably not just send it to the forensics lab, but also to check through it. You know, literally read her texts and stuff. Makes sense. Paul had her phone. They handed it to Paul. So on day one, when they're all searching in the river, and not in the river, sorry, in the surrounding area, and, you know, on day one, when she goes missing, Paul has Nicola's mobile phone. You know, it's left on the bench, the dog, all that. Paul has it. On day two, when they wake up on Saturday morning, Paul still has Nicola's mobile phone. Or the review and telephony and digital examination of the phone means the police have it, and they have yet to review it. But they haven't reviewed it yet. Securing CCTV footage from Nicola's home address means the police have not got Paul's CCTV footage in their possession on day two. So on day one, when he's ruled out because of CCTV footage, they don't have the CCTV footage. They can only have seen it. They cannot have, you know, they don't have it in the office. They haven't secured it. They can only, the only time that Paul can be ruled out in the early investigation by the police is when they visit his home, and potentially, it's not guaranteed they've done this, but potentially look through his CCTV and guarantee that he is still at home the whole time. It just seems like that's not right. How long have they got? Because when did Paul end up on the search? That later that afternoon, you know, by the river. What happened later that day? I need to maybe piece this together at some point, but in order to fully rule Paul out, you would have to sit at that computer in his office and review the CCTV from, like, for hours, like within half an hour. Like, how fast can you get through it? How much can you review? How accurate is your review? You don't take away a copy of it. They're looking to secure, on day two, on Saturday morning, someone who's got their head screwed on comes into the office and says, have you got that CCTV? And they say, no, we've seen it though. And they go, go back out, get down there now and get Paul Ansell, give you a copy of that now. It's a bit late though, isn't it? A bit weird. Conducting financial inquiries. A bit vague, but makes sense. So what happens is on day two, on Saturday morning, an experienced detective inspector comes in and grabs everyone effectively by the scruff of the neck and says, have you only been out there looking in the bushes? Why have you not done this? And they start doing a proper investigation on day two. The SIO also deployed 2 detectives to Mr. Ansell to secure a detailed account reflecting Nicola's family life and background. This person rightfully suspects Paul and wants a better look at Paul Ansell. And I can imagine that conversation in the office. I don't know who this is, but I feel like I like this person maybe, but like they're a police and this is going to end up getting weird, isn't it? Because Nicola, you know what happens. Like, this is the report. But this person sends them round to Paul's house. I mean, it might be that they're just covering their ass, but it feels to me like this person's like said, listen, you get round there, I want a proper read on him, he could be involved here, give me the full story on Paul Ansell. The SIO attended the Riverbank location and met with the POISA lead and the LFRS National Interagency Liaison Officer to assess the scene and prioritise actions. I wonder if I remember that picture of them all at the river, or if that was, I don't know when I got into this, you know, probably on the 11. I got into this when Paul Ansell did his first interview, so I don't know which day that was exactly. I can't remember off the top of my head. The POISA held the view that to place a scene coordinate at the location was of no forensic value, and this was agreed and recorded by the SIO. Right. From the SIO's own visual assessment of the scene and known circumstances, their conclusion was that the working hypothesis being followed was correct. Their view was that Nicola had entered the river and there was no suspected third-party involvement. So how on earth could you stand at the riverbank and decide that, yeah, she probably went in here and she probably fell in, and you decide that there's no forensic value to cordoning off that location? I'd have to get Steve of the Dead on that. Like, that's exactly what he's up to. You know, forensic psychology isn't completely the same as on the ground forensics, but you know what I mean? He would be able to talk about forensic value of a crime scene for sure. Or a scene. Like, you know, how on earth can there be no forensic value? I know you're not going to dust the bench for fingerprints necessarily, but like, the phone was on the bench, the dog thing's there, you think she's gone in the water there. This is effectively not, you could say it's not a crime scene, you can mitigate it in that way, but I'm not having it. Like, there's no forensic value, not even to get the forensic team down to look at the riverbank and to prove that someone's, like, imagine if they'd got the forensic team down and you had these photographs of like big skid marks and a handprint like clawing at the riverbank. Like, you'd be like, that's forensic value, isn't it? Maybe that what this means is the POISA had a good look and decided there were no fingerprints or handprints or skid marks, so they just said, fuck it then, there's no point in getting the forensics out. I cannot understand that. Agreed and recorded by the SIO though. From the SIO's own visual assessment of the scene and known circumstances, their conclusion was the working hypothesis being followed was correct. So this must, in my opinion, this is my opinion now, what's happened is they've said, we don't need the forensics team out, and they've looked themselves and they've decided themselves, no, we don't. If I could see even a slight footprint or a thing, I might get them out, but I can't see anything here that they could possibly come and help us with. I'll just have them running, like rolling around in the mud for nothing, effectively. You're not going to get a fingerprint off a muddy riverbank. I just... You know, this, I can't understand that. That's an alarm bell ringer for me. I just said that I thought this SIO was really good, and they've come in and they've shaken everyone up in the office, and they've, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Fast Show. DCI Monkfish! 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 You know, taking no shit, kicking ass, and then all of a sudden, we've decided not to set up the forensics, so it doesn't matter. Don't worry about the forensics. They're not going to... It's not going to... Yeah. Don't worry about no forensics. What? Their view is that Nicola had entered the river and there was no suspected third-party involvement. They think she just fell in. A number of factors supported the hypothesis at this time that Nicola had entered the water. Nicola's last known position. Known how? At this time, we're talking Saturday morning, the next day. Do you have the geolocation off the phone by the next day? Are you working on eyewitness reports? Is that it? I got eyewitness reports, so she's in the field. So she's probably gone in the river. The location of the dog harness. Agreed, it's right by the river. The position and activity of Nicola's mobile phone. So position, it's on the bench. Activity, it's still connected to the team's call, or you can trace it walking around the field, because I don't think they can actually accurately ping it walking around the field. The behaviour of Nicola's dog. Nicola's medical history. The low possibility of an exit by any land routes. How can you rule out the land routes as a low possibility? Like, surely in general sense. I don't know if these are supposed to be taken individually or as a cohesive whole, but like, the low possibility of an exit by land routes would be a low possibility if she's gone in the water. But like, generally most people would exit a field by the land routes. Like it's in most cases, people exit the fields by the land routes, don't they? It's the low possibility that she went in the water. Like that's why it's so weird, is because it's quite unlikely that people would end up going in the water. Michael Fish, is Higgsy coming up? I don't know. If it comes up in this part, it comes up in this part if he is mentioned, but I will look into him. And after this College of Policing report, which is extensive and going to take us a few episodes, we will do the response from SGI, and then I'll probably look into that, and there'll be other things. Like I said, there's a whole little list of little bits and pieces that I think really require highlighting, but I've not been able to decide how to put them into a full show. Maybe I'll look into that, yeah, for sure. Right. But it's bizarre that the possibility of an exit by land routes is considered the low possibility in itself. If you add them all together and say, right, that creates the low possibility of an exit by land routes, maybe, but it's much more likely that people exit a field by land routes. So I would say the high possibility of an exit by land routes is still a fact, even though, you know, we're worried about the river and all this. I don't know, it's a strange one, that the low possibility of an exit by land routes. I assume they mean there's only a few ways out of the field and they're covered by CCTV or eyewitnesses at certain times, so we haven't got her coming out of the field. So she went in, she didn't come out on the land routes that we can see. The hypothesis was also supported by river conditions, as reported by the diver who was responsible for diving on Friday 27th of January. The water temperature at that time was estimated to have been in the region of 3.6 degrees C, not freezing, which is enough to cause cold water shock for anyone entering the water, apparently. I'll have to take their word for it. I'm not going to pedantically, piece by piece, every aspect of this that might be a separate... If I know, I can critique that, but I don't know, I can critique that. But maybe we can look into that. The depth of the water at the suspected point of entry was 4.6 metres. Is this where, Andy, like you said, you sent me something in mods about the river? Is this where you wanted me to look at that? Oh, big ups. I just noticed you just said Slinky's got a premiere scheduled for 5. After we've done this, everyone go and watch Slinky's videos, because I just have to stream in the afternoon, you know, get this sort of stuff done. I didn't realise I was over streaming. I apologise. And I'm looking for what you were saying. About distance from the bench. You weren't trying to show me the height of the river, were you? Okay. But, like, you know, these facts and calculations can be probably done in their own episode about the river itself, and have been by other streamers, YouTubers, and it was, I mean, I'm going to shout him out, even though I've decided to agree with a certain other streamer, a lady who I've never watched any of her content before, but I watched one of her videos yesterday. We covered it on Twitch, and I'll probably end up uploading it to Battery Exhausted, who decided that she doesn't want to talk about anyone's name because it comes with all these other problems. And I've had that, you know, giving streams and other YouTubers shouts out, and they've ended up becoming people that have been less than, like, I don't know, you know, I don't know. So, but it was Eddie's Vinyl Break who first published he found content that was made by a nice lady who was giving a speech about river behaviour and water and stuff, and, like, you know, Eddie presented that on his channel, and that sort of entered the conversation about how rivers work, and tides and heights, and there was also some people who investigated the height of that particular, you know, you can get the records on the Met Office to see what the weather was like and the river and the tides and stuff like that. So this has been sort of covered. It is to be my assumption that these calculations and numbers are to be correct, because the external review has promised me these are correct facts, but they can be then fact checked at a later date. But I'm not here to fact check the depth of the river today. The depth of the water was suspected 4.6 metres. That's enough to drown in, obviously. Like a teacup full of water is enough to drown in, isn't it? But it's enough to be covering your head, isn't it? The river current was calculated. It doesn't. It says that, and it was suspected that, but every other time we've seen that place in the river, it's not been. But the river. I mean, Peter Folding himself said that it was not that. But the river current was calculated at 3.8 meters per second. That seems pretty fast. The current. But when it's been heavy rain, like I know this for a fact because I live in these sort of countryside areas. I don't have a tidal river that goes out right by my way, but we've got rivers, and when it's been heavy raining, the groundwater that runs off, you might think, well, you know, rivers don't run very fast, but the groundwater that runs off that feeds into these rivers, especially if they're smaller waterways, can make it dramatically rise and go fast. So depending on the weather and the time and the days leading up to it, it's possible. Sufficient to have carried Nicola to and potentially over the weir a short distance downstream. Contradicting what the... I mean, yes, it could have done that, but it contradicts the evidence that was presented at the inquest, because we're saying that drowning victims sink to the bottom. I mean, we've got a conflict between what Peter says and what the inquest says, but we've got independent other people that are not Peter in the inquest that say a drowning victim sinks to the bottom. You've got the inquest saying that she died immediately after she hit the water. So you're saying that she then was taken over the weir before she had a chance to sink to the bottom. Downstream from the weir, the river is subject to tidal influence, increasing the likelihood of movement and unpredictability. Agreed, but the tide goes in and out, and what tends to happen is, whilst it's unpredictable movement, it can mean that it keeps things in place, so to speak, because they go forward and back, but on that day there was 0.46 metre water above the level of the weir. Records show high tide was at 15:30 and was 9.12 metres, with an expert advising that high tide is likely to present a body floating on the water and low tide is likely to deposit a floating body. We're saying that at 3 in the afternoon, like, see, this doesn't... I'm not having it. I'm not having it. I'm not having it. They're not saying it. They're saying it could have and it's likely to have. But at 3:30, it's high tide. Yeah? And at that point, she could be floating around on the river. On that day. But they've mobilised all of these search agencies on that day before lunch, before 12 o'clock, you know. They've mobilised these agencies and an extensive search of the area and river was carried out, it said, didn't it? They included drones. And you're telling me that no one saw her floating about? The investigating officer also attended the scene on Sunday, 29th of January, and liaised with the POISA lead and search teams. This is that bronze, silver, gold structure that they were talking about as well in the last episode. You know, the investigating officer, the POISA, the search teams, you know, the strategy, implementation, and whatever bronze is. The investigating officer's attendance confirmed the view that a third-party intervention or assault was highly unlikely. Really? So the next day, the investigating officer, who's the one that came and shook everyone up and said, let's get this done properly, yeah? Are they, or, yeah, I'm assuming that still means them. They're not saying the SIO now, they're saying the IO, but I think they mean the same person. They then come down on Sunday and say, hey, no, don't worry. No one's done any bad stuff to Nicola. It's not tidal before the weir, and as far as I know. The suggestion here is that she went over the weir before 3:30, but after 3:30 she can be floating around after the weir bit. I mean, none of it makes sense, because even that suggestion is that she is simply deposited further on down the river, and all of those locations are extensively searched. So none of it helps in any way. But of course, Peter Folding's account differs from this now. We haven't really got into that too much, have we? He's not become a part of this here, so not yet anyway, in the big way. I'm just confused now why the investigating officer decides to confirm that this third-party intervention was highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. I suppose they've got, I'll tell you what it is, they've got Paul, the only thing that's different here that the investigating officer has known, according to what this report is stating, the investigating officer now knows the movements of the river. You know how the river goes up and down. How did I not bring my bottle in? Where's my bottle of drink? But there's one other thing the investigating officer also knows. I'm going to grab my bottle of drink. Do you know what the investigating officer also knows? I'm literally just going to go to the bathroom. Put in chat what you think the investigating officer also has had chance to know. Oosh, I see what Michael Fish thinks. I think some people might have thought there might have been, it sounds a bit like they go in the one day, they're all on it, and the next day someone calls them up and say, hey, this is Mason's, back off. But to me, it's that the third-party intervention was highly unlikely. They sent out a team to Paul Ansell's house to get a deeper read on him, didn't they? The SIO, when they first came in on the Saturday, said that they want detailed accounts of the eyewitnesses. That might rule out third-party involvement. They want the review of the telephone. That might rule out third-party involvement. Doesn't really. The CCTV footage from Paul. That might rule out third-party involvement. Not really, because it's only her leaving the home, isn't it? It's not her at the bench. Financial inquiries, but they sent 2 detectives to Mr. Ansell to secure a detailed account reflecting Nicola's family life and background. And then they've come back the next day and said, right, I've had that report from those 2 police people that went to see Paul Ansell, and I've decided there's no foul play. I mean, that to me is the only other thing that they have learned in that overnight time before they attend the scene on Sunday. Like overnight between Saturday and Sunday, the only additional information they learn is from what Paul tells them. Feels a little bit like Paul is able to sort of guide the investigation in some way. That initially he was ruled out because they saw the CCTV. It's been mentioned a bit, the Ring doorbell and the CCTV. So Paul's fucking hell. Like the this can't be real, can it? This can't be real. Paul's CCTV, which to us, when we eventually get to see it, is absolutely cut and shut, chopped to bits, faker than a £3 note. It that is what the police have said rules Paul out. But to me, that rules Paul in. Makes it problems. Who's doing this? It also raises lots of other questions and problems. But like, and then overnight, you've sent a team down to Paul's house. They've had a good chat with Paul Ansell, and whatever yarn Paul has spun them, they're doing. I don't know, like, how he interacts with the police himself, because he does have this one comment in the interview where he says he's had a good relationship with the police, but it's yeah for me. But I wonder so much about how he has been able to guide this investigation, whether it's through emotion, like, I don't know, like, he doesn't seem very emotional in the interviews, does he? But, you know, is he emotionally appealing to them? Is there something that he's telling them that's like a private matter that's not being discussed in public that we're still not party to, or is there stuff that we are party to? Big ups MJ Carroll. I hope you're good too. Is there anything that, like, behind closed doors that Paul is saying? I've got a tickly nose. Hang on, excuse me. Is there anything that Paul is potentially telling the police that's confirming for them foul play is not an option? And what I mean by that, I suppose, is confirming his innocence. Because to me, when I looked at his interviews, and to me, when I look at his story and his timeline, and to me, but to them, no, Paul, and to Peter Folding as well on that Channel 5 programme, and on the interviews he conducted on the Riverside, and when he was talking on GB News and the other news outlets that he's talked to, and Sky News, doing a lot of media there. But Mark Williams Thomas as well. He was quick to adjudicate Paul completely innocent on the telly. He said Paul's not involved in this. Paul has managed to, everyone he's encountered, he's managed to convince them of his, I'm not saying convince them of his innocence, but they are convinced of his innocence. Except for us, looking at him on the tellies, looking at him on the interviews, watching his behaviour and consequent behaviour. Except for us, looking at seeing his Facebook behaviour, the people he follows on Instagram, selling the house, except for us. Thank you, Celtic Cross. Thank you for the 199 super chat. Big ups. Good chat tonight. Thanks. I'm caught up here now on what it is that happened overnight. It's the report. Those two policemen went to see Paul Ansell. I say policemen because it falls into my mouth, but I mean police people. The two police people went to see Paul Ansell on Saturday. After, bear in mind, he's had a full day of searching for Nikki, and they've called off the search at 7:30. I'm thinking, hang on, yeah. Prioritised inquiries included. Also deployed 2 detectives to Mr. Ansell to secure a detailed account. This happened on Saturday. They deployed 2 detectives to secure a detailed account on Saturday. But on Saturday, Nicola was missing, and it was day 2 of her being missing. So what was Paul doing? Doody 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 doody.
It just seems absolutely
doody doody. Doody doody doody. When was the first Paul Ansel interview? Is this? This must be this. Must be this.
I don't really have any.
February the 3rd. February the 3rd. Alexa, what day was February the 3rd?
The 3rd of February 2023 was on a Friday.
Do. What day is this? Saturday the 28th. It's like a week later he's on the bank doing his interviews, isn't it? Like a full week later. Like, we don't have really eyes on what Paul was doing that day and the day after. And like, we don't really understand. Like, I need to go. Do I need to? Again, I'm. My role in this is that I react to body language on the internet, and I react to stuff, and I talk psychology with my friends on Super Chuffer channel. That's what we said. Like, we did a lot of other kinds of streams here when we were getting going, and I've sort of fell in. I did gaming and I did variety, and I've decided to sort of focus more on this on Super Chuffer, put the gaming on its own channel, do the variety sort of reacts on another channel, look at the lol cows on Battery Exhausted. But here we do like sort of true crime adjacent material, you could say, but I'm not a true crimer, I'm not a detective, I'm not trying to solve this case. I don't think I'm going to find one special thing and I'll be the big one and write a book, and I think I can contribute, but my role here is not necessarily, as I say, to understand and be an expert on everything. So maybe it's for others to put this first week. I feel like I'm in on day 7.
Anything to say other than what the family said yesterday?
You know, I feel like I come in on day 7.
My whole focus is my 2 girls.
Analysing and reacting to the body language, because I remember at the time as well, I like over our, this is sort of a mental break here for a minute, but it includes all this true crime content. Over the time that, you know, I've been growing up in the UK, there's been big cases that have hit the news, big news stories, and we've covered in Thus podcast, actually, on this channel, we've covered some of them a little bit in our conversations about serial killers and stuff. We obviously discussed Madeleine McCann. I've got a playlist on her separately. Criminals who publicly appealed involves some of these big cases. Big ups Carol Hankinson. Thanks for the £5 super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. The John Bennett Ramsey is an international case, but yeah. So I'm looking for the one where I've actually done a video of Tracy Andrews, road rage killer. I'm laughing about it, but Tracy Andrews, road rage killer, there she is. You see her face she's on the right hand side with the scary face. When that was on the news, like, it came on the news, they did a press conference. Tracy Andrews was like, if anyone's got any help, anyone can help. Like, I'm looking for the person who killed my, you know, and it turned out it was her. My nan said, it came on the news, this press conference. I remember it to this day. We're sat in my nan's house watching the telly. This press conference comes on the, because it was our area. It was like central news. It was in the Midlands. Came on, and my nan just watched a little bit of the press conference. Like, she sort of looked over her glasses and put down a crossword and went, she's done that. Nan knows. And like, Nan knows. Nan used to know. Like, she had this, like, you know, it was like a sixth sense thing, like, you know, whatever. Like, she's done it. And then it came out later, like, yeah, she'd done it. But, like, maybe as a more, you know, maybe now as a grown-up, I can understand what my nan was doing. She was, like, doing a bit of body language, a bit of natural intuition. She was just like, she looks guilty as sin. She's done it. And you get these big cases, don't you, where there was another one there, Stuart Hazel. He hid her upstairs and then went on the news, like, after he murdered her. He knew that he killed them and went on the news. She was under the bed the whole time. It's one of my personal favourites. They went on the news. So, with the Nicola Bulley thing, when Paul Ansell turned up on the news, I cut it as a video, Paul Ansell first impressions, look there as well. When he turned up on the news with his hat on, doing his thing, like, it was one of those Nan knows moments. Like, this is a week after she went missing, but my foot in the door was watching that and going, hello, you look fucking guilty. I do body language on my channel. This is the sort of thing I'll talk about. And so I did a body language analysis of him, and then I talked about the corresponding news article, which was one of her friends listing 11 facts about the case, trying to drum up some media interest, and I critiqued it. And then he did a longer interview. My mum said to me, this is on Channel 5. I thought, this is right up my street, so I cut it. You know where we're at. But it does occur to me that by this point, Paul has had a full week to get this across his chest, to line up his, ideas. He still does a terrible job of it, in my opinion, on the interview. He doesn't mention at all, Nikki, if you're out there, please come home. But then I suppose it's been a week of searching the... But then she's not in the river, because you've spent a week searching in the river already by this point. And the GoFundMe, yeah, absolutely. That was very sus, wasn't it, the GoFundMe? I know what I felt back then, and I know what I said, and what my body language analyses were, but it's occurring to me now more than ever that this was a week on. And, out there looking in the river, like Peter Folding turning up. Peter Folding's turning up to find a body. Like, he's not turning up to find a live person if you're in that river. Like, these appeals on the television, if you're looking to find Nikki alive, then you're either, please, if you've got her, can you let her go? And if you're Nikki, can you come home? But otherwise, who are you talking to, and what you're talking about is like, she's most like, the police have, from what it seems is, you've ruled yourself out to the police, and the police have therefore said back to you, well, she's dead in the river. It's interesting. Very interesting. And that's the only other information on the Sunday. So the Friday she goes missing. The Saturday, the new SIO turns up and says, hey, I'm taking control of this. Make sure you get me these pieces of information. And on Sunday, they come back in the office and say, right, Paul's out, Paul's off the thing. We're not... I've had my information from my 2 police that I've sent out to investigate Paul, and they've come back and said he's clean. This is just a falling in the river job. Third-party intervention or assault is highly unlikely. Confirmed by the eyewitness accounts, highly unlikely. The wet, muddy ground would have experienced disturbance to support such movement, as this was entirely absent. And this was entirely absent. No. So here we go, right? Here we go. I'm going to have a little bit of a laugh. And, it's just a little bit of a laugh, so it's not going to be very, very funny, but it's a little bit of a laugh. Is it on my media, or would it be on my retweets? It'll be on my retweets. Doody-doody-doody. Doody-doody. Retweets, which will be replies, won't it? Doody-doody. It won't be very funny, but it'll be a little bit of a laugh. I suppose this goes in here, kind of. Doody-doody, where is it? Here. So
give me your phone. You always being so fucking friendly, bro.
It's just a thing of someone pushing someone in a river, yeah?
Nigga.
Oh, don't say the N-word. Look, anyway, look, it's a thing of him pushing her in the river.
Hey, what you doing?
And the bank and the disturbance, and all that. What we're saying essentially, the reason I thought this was interesting, I said EVB needs to see this, ha ha ha, because the reason I think it's interesting in one aspect is in this,
Give me your phone.
the person who's the aggressor is coming from down bank almost, and in the idea that Penny comes from over the stile and then up the bank towards Nicola, and Nicola's on the bench with her phone. This character would be Nicola, and this would be Penny.
Give me your phone. You always being so fucking scary.
And she instigates the problem here. So my Penny character instigates the problem. You'd have to swivel these two around in order for Penny to push Nicola in the river. But if Nicola then was aggressive towards someone who was aggressive to them, like in response, and gave them a little push, they go in the river. So it works the other way around on that little... But this isn't Nicola, and there's just some people messing by the river. What we're saying there is that the riverbank, in this instance, if that was happening, and if you want to see what I say on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, although it's now a right-wing mess, isn't it, because Elon Musk owns it. Shouts out, Elon. The bots will be watching now, I've said your name. Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying to me in this review that the reason the theory that Penny came over the stile and they had a fight and then Penny pushed her in, the reason that doesn't hold water, in the police are telling us, and the overview of the police, the external review, is agreeing that the wet muddy ground would have experienced disturbance to support such movement. I can't push her in the river because I will slip on the floor, it's muddy. We all know how muddy that field is because we saw the walk up and down in the following days. I know because I've been on dog walks that the off the path, but even on the path where it gets muddy and the way it gets that time of year, yeah, it's slippy and it's muddy, right? Big ups, Colette. I'm always in a good mood. Karen says Nicola Bulley's dad said in an interview for her to just come home. Agreed. He used to do that, yeah. They could talk things over. Either there'd been a fight or her dad was lying. Interesting aspect of it, yeah. Andrew Starzewolf says wet muddy grass and yet Willow was bone dry. Interesting. The wet muddy ground for me is I think you can't have your cake and eat it. I think if you want to prove that, you should have got the forensics out to take photographs and to push each other around in the mud. But you said there was no forensics, there was no reason to have the forensics out. Again, supporting the idea, we've looked at the riverbank, we're not idiots, we're the police. So we've come down here and we've had a good look at the riverbank and there's no sign of anyone slipping and sliding on this ground. Which rules out third parties. There's no fight happened here. We're the police. We come and looked at the ground. We're not stupid. We're looking for signs of a disturbance. There's no fight happened on the ground here. So we're not getting the forensics out to check the ground and to take photos and do all that and, measurements and stuff because there's nothing to photograph. Okay. Fair enough. But you're not the experts on the wet muddy ground. The forensics are. So you would have had that confirmed by the forensics, I would have thought. And then on top of that, don't start me now. Dog barking. Give us a second. Hey, you chuffer. Stop your messing. You're not having the forensics out to check this wet muddy ground disturbances and sport. The next problem is that you're saying that Nicola fell in the river, but you're saying that there is no disturbance on the ground to support the possibility of a fight. So the same disturbance on the ground that you would expect after a fight, you would also expect if someone fell in the river, no? Like if you fall, you don't just stand there and you go, what? And then you're in. Like you sort of slip and then you slip in and you try and and then you're in. Like there's a moment there while you lose your footing and you usually slip. Like if you've worn wellies and you've walked in the mud with your dog and you know what I'm talking about and you go for a little slip. Like I've fallen over in the woods so many fucking times because I've slipped and there's a big mark on the ground where I've done my slip. And usually you don't go completely straight in. Maybe you do go completely just from off your feet to in the water. But what if you didn't go off your feet and you fell and grabbed hold on any of that? Or if you're in the water and you reached out, can you not grab up and hold? No, you're completely, no distance, there's no way. So you're saying you've gone it's like she jumped in. But if you jumped in, you would even, like, the pressure of jumping on the muddy ground would leave marks. Like, how are there no marks on the riverbank worth forensic investigation to corroborate anything? And yet, you're so sure she went in there because she fell in, but there were no marks, so there was no point in discussing third-party intervention at that exact scene. But third-party intervention could have happened elsewhere, and the phone and the thing could have been put on the bench. But no, because there's no wet footprint marks and there's no signs of a fight in front of the bench, that's it. And we're proving that by not having forensics come down. I think this doesn't, like, this bit doesn't, you know, they need to sort that out and tie that together properly, because it doesn't explain, like, make that make sense. Make that make sense. This was in the wet muddy ground would have experienced disturbance to support such movement, and this was entirely absent. So they're poo-pooing a certain person's idea about Penny coming and having a fight with her as well. Because of that, there's no disturbance on the ground. This view, and it's very Sherlock Holmes, that, isn't it? But I put it to Your Honour that there was no disturbance on the ground. Oh, why didn't we think of that? There's no disturbance on the ground. I'm glad you didn't take photos to prove it. This view was also supported by the prevalence of dog walkers in the area and a busy main road nearby with no suspicious sightings. So you're saying because there were other people walking their dog, and, you know, other dog walk, if there had been some third-party involvement, other dog walkers might have said, oh, I heard a scream, or, oh, wait, hang on, later on someone did hear a scream. And a busy main road nearby with no suspicious sightings. You know, no one ran out onto the main road with a hammer, so we don't think anyone's... Yeah, I get it. The assessment was that the searches being conducted were covering a comprehensive area. The investigating officer felt that there was no reason to secure the attendance of a crime scene manager, as there was no evidence to suggest that criminal activity had occurred. The management of the scene is considered later in this report. To support the investigation, media releases were prepared by Lancashire Constabulary's M&E team. The on-call press officer that weekend reflected that it was difficult to secure the relevant information and a photograph to circulate. Suggestions were made by the M&E team to conduct a media briefing to communicate an appeal, but this option was not taken forward at that time. I mean, this is political. This is the politics of what we're doing here. I'll remind you that if you haven't watched my first episode on this, do so. And that this chuffer is a politician, and he would probably want, I feel like what they're pushing towards is more regulation of the media and their ability to control the narrative, and it will involve their policing of it or interaction with that space through a third party, maybe like a private company, and maybe they're looking to engage with the social media in different ways, because it feels like they're saying in this report that you haven't got any control over the social media, and if you want to control a narrative, they're literally talking these terms, you know, if you want to control the narrative about what's going on, it's no longer the case that us and the media, we're going to do a press conference and then the Sun newspaper is going to tell you what to think. That's no longer the case. What's more the case now is that we're considering more carefully how we engage with the community through the media and stuff like that. So what they're saying, and what's happening in the report, Snowden's report, is writing off their M&E team, because to support the investigation, media releases were prepared and they were shit. The on-call press officer thought that they couldn't secure relevant information and they couldn't get a photograph. Like in 2023, you can't put together a press release in the media team. You might as well lose your jobs. You might as well jump in the river, you fucking idiots. Oh, sorry, I'm swearing now, but it's difficult to secure information and get a photograph. Like, what? Suggestions were made by the M&E team to conduct a media briefing to communicate an appeal, but this option was not taken forward at this time. Maybe we should have maybe we should do one of those press conferences, you know. Oh, Nikki, if you're out there, can you come home? Maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. It sounds like they are being thrown under the bus themselves because they're just not doing a good job of communicating with the media and the public there, which was the exact allegation thrown at the police. That the big problem here is that they didn't communicate with the public and engage with the control the narrative on social media. So this is a big, this is a big thing. The local community became engaged in a search response to find Nicola, but felt they were hindered through a lack of information. A bit strange because there is no information. Are you saying the local community blame the police? Again, throwing the media and engagement team under the bus because the media and engagement team didn't engage with the community, did they? So the community went off doing their own thing. You've got the community going wild here. You've got the community running riots. They're doing their own thing. They're putting their own research team, their own search teams together. You can't have that. Cripers. What are you doing, media and engagement team? You should have been on that. Kind of members of the public doing whatever the fuck they want. They're being hindered through a lack of information anyway, but there was no information. As far as everyone was concerned, the wet muddy ground was not even disturbed. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is actually quite an important piece of information that has to go down as a fact, is that some quite senior police officers that have got their heads screwed on and not stupid went and had a look over there. And maybe you can cover up your tracks if you have a big fight and there's claw marks in the ground. Maybe you can cover that up, or maybe you don't, and maybe it's hard to, and maybe the ground is, maybe a forensics expert in the way the ground is would have been able to prove that. They didn't bother to take photographs, which I think is bizarre. Like, you'd have thought close-up photographs of these areas to prove, but they're saying that they've had a look, the muddy ground was not disturbed, and that's just like, everyone's going to think this and think that, but they weren't on the scene. They didn't see the ground, and the ground proves to me, and that's good enough for me. But we didn't communicate that to the people, the locals, but it's kind of irrelevant. Like, I suppose what they're saying is the only thing you could have communicated to the local people more is that she's dead in the river, instead of having them all going out looking in the fields. But there isn't really any information to share with the local community because, as you've said, the information you've gathered is basically nil. Not that they haven't tried. They've gone out and done a little few bits and pieces, but they've come back with no evidence, haven't they? So, big up Squirrel Sniper. It was suggested to the review that the circulation of CCTV imagery from that morning would have assisted their efforts. Matt, thank you very much for the £2 super chat. First time seeing you live. Such good viewing. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. The local community became engaged in a search response. It was suggested to the review that the CCTV from the morning would have assisted their efforts. Who is in the review? This again. Who is in the review? They said that what we said is that the review was we've got no guarantee whether it was a written response, a online conversation, a Zoom call, or an actual face-to-face meeting. But my guess is that someone like Emma White has said to them when asked, well, we went out looking everywhere, but we didn't know where to look and what to do because you didn't give us the CCTV, the police. Someone in the community here, the local community, someone in the local community is eggy with the police because they weren't able to do their search well because the police didn't give them the CCTV from the morning. But the police didn't have the CCTV from the morning until the next day, and that CCTV was outside Paul's house, not from everywhere. So you can't get eggy about it. They didn't have it. But thank you, Deborah Rabbit, for the £2 super chat. Big ups, thank you. Thank you for that. We've still got the coffee.com on the system as well, which gets your name and your thing read out if you fancy that. I'm happy with everything. I'm grateful for it all. Thank you. I do really gratefully and graciously accept money for my work. I'm happy to do that. If I create something of value, then maybe it's worth supporting. Emma was pushing the GoFundMe. She certainly was, wasn't she? Simply because that's come up. Again, I should have a retweet of this GoFundMe, shouldn't I? Interesting in the GoFundMe, shouts out Nikki. This photograph that was used on the GoFundMe features Paul and Nicola and the girls. And it was... Actually, I shouldn't really be showing pictures of the girl, should I? Anyway, look, it was on the GoFundMe. In that same image, there's a round mirror in the background, and you can see in the round mirror that Paul Ansel is leaning over on his own, and they've superimposed Nikki and the girls into that image. So they took a photograph of Paul and then put Nikki and the girls on top of it for the GoFundMe, and that was fucking weird. That was weird. Big ups DC Primetime. Big shouts out DC Primetime from the US of A. $9.99 super chats. Thank you very much. I'll have to save that till I go to America to spend that. No, don't worry. Google will translate dollars into pounds for me, and I'll be paid appropriately. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. But really interesting that GoFundMe featured. We talk about the CCTV images being, well, essentially fake. You know, like doctored, cut and shut. And now we're looking at an image for a GoFundMe, which was organised before this big national media attention came on the thing, before we had this, big national media attention, in place was a big GoFundMe campaign for Munnis, wasn't there? Big fund for Munnis, and it included fake images of Nikki and the girls, which included with Paul, put together with Paul, which was strange, to be honest, very strange. Thank you, Michael Fish. I will look out for that. In fact, I'll copy and paste that immediately now onto my notes, and I'll look at that. So, the local community, and I perceive that, who was it? It was Emma leading that charge, wasn't it? Eggy, because they couldn't get a hold of the CCTV from that morning, and they think if they could have done, it would have helped. And I guess what they mean is what she was wearing, clear pictures of her, but also, very interesting, that police are not forthcoming with what could be evidence and handing it around to the community, which is Emma. Emma's in with Paul. Paul's in with Peter Folding. How people seem to be connected here. One thing I do value in the police, even if we're going to end up, and I don't know if we're going to end up saying this about Lancashire Police, but even if aspersions of corruption are going to be thrown around, the police are supposed to be independent, work on our behalf, not a private company. So giving out the CCTV is possibly good because we want to find Nikki, but if they have suspicions, jumping to the wrong conclusions and handing out stuff from, if Paul is a suspect and Emma and Paul are working together, then I'd be careful about what Paul hands out, wouldn't I? And what in my pursuit of the truth, I'd be careful about taking information from one of what I would consider to be prime suspects in what could be a crime, and using that to be my motivation, evidence. The thing that rules Paul out in the mind of the police thus far is that he's got CCTV to prove he was at home. And if it's this... Sorry. Too many windows now. Right, I'll close them. That's a super chuffer. That's Paul. That can go. This is the Nicola Bulley playlist. You can see that. If it's this from Danvers, that can't be good enough, can it? Because it doesn't rule him out, because it's fake and it's crap. So... handing that over and handing it out to people is actually quite a good move, to not do that, because you might be assisting the suspect in covering up their tracks. So in some way I think that's good. The other thing that I think is strange is that if it's Paul's CCTV from his house, then he can give that to Emma, and Emma can give that to the community. Like, they can circulate it themselves. Indeed, they did, didn't they? Didn't they? This is really interesting, actually. So, it's suggested to the review, those bad police people didn't let us have a look at the CCTV. So I'm to understand that early doors, Team Paul, which is Emma, the community, who else in the community is angry at the police for not being able to see the CCTV? Come on, it's Emma. And so Emma is angry. I'm going to just state what I think. Like, I think someone like Emma is angry because she wanted more information about what was on those CCTV cameras from around the area. Does that mean she wants to confirm in her own mind whether Paul is telling the truth or not? Is she still not quite sure about Paul? And she really needs to see it in black and white that she really did, and Nikki really did leave the house? Or is she worried and watching her own back and deciding whether Nikki did or did not leave the house? It's not Paul's CCTV now, because if you're the community, the local community engaged in this response, and you're headed by Emma, that's who you're headed by. Come on then. Don't mess. If you're headed by Emma, then you're angry in the early stages that you can't get hold of important evidence. And it could be because you want to verify and corroborate what Paul's saying, or it could be because you want to hand it back to Paul. Same people that bring in Peter Folding. One of Nicola's family friends, who became the community spokesperson, told the review, I mean, who's this? One of Nicola's family friends who became the community spokesperson. And this is, I'll repeat it, but, you know, it's not really, it's coming up now off the thing. Like, the reason that we were doing these body language reactions to Emma and her interviews is because she did the interviews and she looked like sus. So we did them. And who puts themselves forward as the community spokesperson? And it's this, like, I don't know if I can be arsed with it myself, or if it just would make me annoyed. This constant, like, almost like keeping up with the Joneses, have to be the biggest one. You have, like, what's the name on that? You know, the council meeting. You have no jurisdiction here, Shirley Weaver. You know, what's her name? You have no jurisdiction here. What's her name? So-and-so Weaver. Like, it's one of her family friends who became the community spokesperson told the review that this was challenging for the community, who were driven by a strong desire to help the police search effort. This is a problem for the police. What's this now? What happened now? They did knock the door earlier. I think they might have knocked earlier. Anyway, I'm busy. Oosh. We've got a problem here with the police, haven't we? We've got a big problem. I'll tell you for why. Is that it's a strong desire to help the police search from the community, and the community are reporting back that they're being hindered and that there's a problem. And so you've got an angry community. You're the police, you think she's in the river. The community want to go out and search in the woods and fields and do everything they possibly can to help. And you're not even communicating. And this document is supposed to... Don't start, Nikki. Nikki. This document is supposed to... is examining the... Remember, this is not like trying to find the truth for Nicola in this document. Like, that's what we all want, and that's what we should be focused on. But this document is about an external review of the police, an independent review of the police. And a big critique is that we should be... controlling the narrative on social media, and obviously losing control of the local community, like losing control of the goodwill of the local community, setting yourself, like having like Emma is a problem for the police. Emma's problematic to their relationship. Like their relationship with Emma, Jackie Weaver, that's it. Well done, Michael Fish. That's it. This is problematic, and it's being highlighted in this report, and it's an important moment. And because my cat distracting me, my brain's got a bit distracted, but it's an important moment because it's the breakdown in the relationship between the police and the community, and it's highlighted here, and it's being done so, specifically highlighted here because that not a pat on the head for the police there, not a biscuit for that problem, but not a problem they're going to blame the police and say you're bad police, but problem because we need to control these communities and social medias better, we need more money, and we need to create more jobs, and we need to create a department that does it. I think that's what's being aimed at again. I think this is being highlighted here, but also it's very interesting to me that Nikki's family friend Emma, who became the community spokesperson, told the Review this was challenging for the community, who are driven by a strong desire to help the police search effort. Like, it's politics. You don't get to be on the Parent-Teacher Association, Jackie Weaver, if you don't know your politics. Politics is all over this now. Like I said, between them, between Specialist Group International, protest removers, between Snowden and the police. This is all now a political bun fight and pulling of the blanket. And Emma is involved now as a sort of community politician person herself. Emma's very sneaky, two-faced, political. To this review, she's telling them the police made it challenging for us, the community, and we really wanted to help. Like, she obviously wanted to drive the GoFundMe money up as well, didn't she? I'll tell you what would have been challenging is telling the public, don't bother searching, we think she's in the river and probably dead, and if she is, she's dead now, so you're not going to get her out alive. Like, we don't need you going in all the fields and houses nearby, really. That was what the police were thinking. You can glean from this report, yeah? No third-party involvement. She didn't leave the field by any other means. Most likely she went in the river. We think she's in the river. For some reason, we can't find her in the river yet, but we think she's in the river, right? The community want to go out searching and doing all stuff, and some woman called Emma is getting them all gathered at the town hall like a pitchforks meeting. And like, now we've got to go and police the town hall where they're having this big meeting. We've got to go and send someone down there to, check out. Well, maybe they did, or maybe they didn't have a police presence at that town hall meeting. But you know what I mean? The town hall, the residents are now coming out in force. And I'm the coordinating officer on the ground. I've got all my search people gone out across the fields on the first day, the surrounding area. We covered this smaller area on the first day. So I guess you can go and help us look in the fields. And at the time, we were all saying, help find Nikki, help bring her home, yellow ribbons and all that. Well, the police don't really feel like that, do they? Like, your campaign and your GoFundMe and your media interest and all the money that comes in and the yellow ribbons, and creating a yellow ribbon thing means you can sort of create a brand and a thing that you can sell, and creating all that seemed to be a bit extra as far as the police are concerned, because they're not getting engaged with this community spokesperson. They're not really interested in their efforts. And it would probably annoy the police in some way, wouldn't it? To have Emma slating them afterwards, saying that they couldn't do it. The local people couldn't do a good job. The community were challenged by the police in their ability to help search for Nicola, because the police didn't even think it was worthy doing. Big ups, Lucia. Remember the big blowy man, yeah. And big ups Ali Harris, who says Mr. Snowman received a 1.25 million funding. Oh, Snowman is Snowden, isn't it? Just 3 weeks after her death. There's a lot of political money going on. Big ups Me and Green, got a new tune out at 8 PM if anyone's interested. Check out Me and Green's channel for some cool music. Big ups Me and Green. I will talk about other channels, I will shout people out, absolutely. sometimes, like with the occasional one, they might end up thinking that hedgehogs aren't real. So, but the true crime community, the crama world, true crime drama, it does seem that people just like trying to get others sucked in to their dramas. So I'm glad that I'm not a fully fledged, and never will be, a dyed-in-the-wool true crimer, and I don't want to be a big member of the true crime community for that reason. I will make my content, people will watch it, and I will not get engaged. On Battery Exhausted, we will have a laugh at lol cows, but I will not get drawn into a true crime drama. However, I will shout people out on the stream, like me and Green, who are, like, you know, worthy of it. Just please don't go turning into a nutter who thinks hedgehogs don't exist, please. Anywho, I'm surprised to hear Emma's stance against the police. I don't know how much Emma would understand will be reported on. You know, I don't know how much she believes this will be kept between her and the person she's talking to, or whether this is going to... But they've held her out to dry here. They basically said Emma had a right go at us during the... like, reading between the lines, during the interview with Emma, she had a right go at us, said that the police really didn't help us look for Nicola. I mean, in a way, maybe she's overdoing it to make herself look more innocent. She was desperate to find her, and you couldn't help me find her, and why couldn't you help me find her? In another way, though, it's contrived, isn't it? Because if you accept that she was in the water, why are you so cross that you didn't have the CCTV early doors? How would that have helped you get her out the water? You know, doesn't seem to tie up Emma's vitriol, Emma's anger, because this came later. This review comes later. You know, when we're talking about it. Oh yeah, it's months later. I'm sad that Nikki died. You know, managed to sort of move on with our life a little bit. We're trying to, you know, obviously. In my life, if I'm Emma, then my life isn't dramatically changed. You know, I've still got all of my stuff. My life's still happening the way it normally was. I just don't have Nicola in it. But talking to this police investigation, the external review of the police later on, I'm still angry that the police didn't show me the CCTV early doors. I wanted that CCTV. And that meant that we all wanted to help them find her, and we couldn't. But sort of overlooking the fact that even if you had the CCTV, it would have done nothing to help you find her. Bit weird. Lancashire Constabulary had set up a briefing document for public tasking and to record responses. However, this family friend felt that there had been little police coordination of the community search efforts. You're right, she did. She set up her own chuffing maps. Like, this is... Like, sometimes maybe I think that Emma... Like, you know, I done a murder. Work meeting. Wrap her in a sheeting. You know, all that business. Like, having a laugh about how she pulled funny faces and made funny sounds during interviews and looked well guilty. I wonder if she's guilty of not necessarily the direct involvement with Nicola's disappearance, but in the collusion and cover-up, and feels guilty for the excitement that she feels for being involved in a potential murder case, and like isn't actually that sad or upset about Nicola's death, but actually more excited, and maybe it's that causes her to feel these guilts. There's a lot more for me to draw out and draw upon Emma after reading this, because the family friend felt there had been little police coordination of the community search efforts. So you can do their job better then, yeah, can you, Emma? Like, if you're looking for a missing person out in the fields, maybe they could have done a better job. But the police at this point have already decided that searching in the bins up and down the streets is not worth their time, so they didn't do that and wanted to focus their efforts on the river, and had obviously decided that if she is in the river, she is dead, because you're not living underwater for any extended period of time, so it's only a matter of time before they find her. But whilst that's urgent to some people, to most people, to them it's simply a matter of time, and the urgency cannot be, like, you're not going to increase the speed of the underwater search by being more urgent, because you're not trying to be urgent, because she's not actually, like, it's not a matter of find her before she dies. Like, you're assuming she's already dead. So having Emma come to you and say, I've got 100 people at the town hall who are ready to go out in the fields, you might want to say, well, fucking send them out in the fields then, you nutter. And I appreciate the community really wants to come together and help find someone who's missing, but it's kind of like Emma doesn't really understand what missing is, how the process is done, and a lot of this that I'm reading today in today's section is kind of explaining to people like Emma how it's done and why. And it's weird actually, because I think back in the day, going back to Paul Ansell and his appeal, which I've now closed the window for, so that was useful. I think Paul Ansell on the riverbank, I would have expected more. I wish we could bring her home where if you're out there, Nikki, etc, etc. But I suppose, like, even then, does he not think she's coming home? Because, like, is it an appeal to try and find Nikki, or is it just that we're waiting to get her out of the river? Obviously, Emma and the community thought that she's not in the river because, with little police coordination of the community search, they believe this to be a missed opportunity. Big ups in chat, Michael Fish. Emma arranged search map. She certainly did at the tennis club. She certainly did. I don't know about an MI5 meeting room though, but she was like coordinating things at the tennis club. Yeah. Good evening, Bosie. The family friend set up a hub to mobilise community-led searches, but this received limited support or direction from the police. Again, I kind of feel like fair enough. If you want to go out and do your own, community policing, the police are probably light touch on that. Like, if you go and have a police representative in that community room, and then they sort of tell you what to do. I mean, it might be good to have a liaison officer in some way there, in some way, but then you're sort of having to direct the community search, and aren't you getting insurance problems and liability problems? And like, you've got your own search that you are conducting, and then you've got all these extra suddenly volunteers in a village hall, and you're like, fuck, what am I supposed to do with all these volunteers in the village hall, these busybodies, so to speak? And I appreciate they want to help, like, they're not just busybodies, they're community people who want to help find Nicola because they don't know where she is. But big up Stover and Dolly's mum. Do what you want with the gallery, come and go as you can, as you feel, see, please. I'll be moving through this. What have we got next? Scene management and control. New senior investigating officer. Conclusions. NCA peer review. Like, this is going to continue in this chapter for quite a bit. So I think what we will be doing is moving through a little bit to... how long have I been on stream? 2 hours 47. Yeah, we'll probably wrap up in about 3.5 hours. So we'll probably do scene management and control. How big is scene management and control? Yeah, we'll probably do scene management and control, and then we'll finish. And then I'll be on... So I'm not finished, though, because I'll either be on Twitch or Battery Exhausted. Depending on how the nutters have behaved this week, we need to do a Battery Exhausted nutter watch as well, don't we? Yeah, the community are not being coordinated by the police, and they're angry that the police are not involved in their efforts. When I say they're angry, Emma is angry that she feels she could have done the police's job better than them, and she's got a load of people in the village hall or the tennis club, and the police have not turned up to tell her what to do. Conclusions. The managerial oversight and command of the early investigation was at a high level. Have a pat on the head, have a biscuit. The attendance at the scene by the SIO and investigating officer, so they're different people, demonstrated senior assessment and scrutiny of the resourcing and working hypothesis. Have another biscuit. The minor deviation from the Lancashire Constabulary MFH policy on an FMIT review is assessed as having no impact on this case because they were off looking at some guns. Someone else did a bit of a look about their job and it didn't matter. And that was... those acronyms don't help me now because I can't exactly remember what they stood for. Missing from home policy and MFH is missing from home, and Force Major Investigation Team. Force Major Investigation Team. So the minor deviation from the missing from home policy of a Force Major Investigation Team review had no impact on this case because they were off doing the guns. We were still all right without them reviewing us. Greater consideration could have been provided to harness the community as a resource in these early search efforts to benefit from local knowledge and to focus joint efforts. So they literally are acknowledging, they'd say what Emma said, Emma's complaint has been reworked into a conclusion that they agree with. But not completely. Greater consideration could have been provided. You could have thought more about how to harness the community, not to do what they want and to do what Emma's saying, but there's a resource there. They were there all at the tennis club and you could have done something with them. But you didn't. For whatever pros and cons, you know, a lot of people might be egging at me for saying, like, the local people turned up and they're busybodies, but actually they really wanted to help Nicola and it was, like, really important. But like I say, like, some of the stuff I think is really effective and some of the stuff is a bit useless. I think some of this, like, they're holding out the cards by the side of the road and, like, you know, maybe it did jog some people's memories, but you could have just tied them up on signposts. You didn't have to have people holding them. The big wavy man, you know, it feels like somewhere along the line someone's enjoying spending money and, you know, printing out their invitations on their computer for their party. But in other ways, if at that time we didn't know what had happened and if she'd been abducted and stuff, it's really important to do all that sort of stuff. So, like, the big search campaign is actually quite important, but it's also been quite important in other cases where they're trying to cover things up and mess people about. So, I don't know, you know, I don't know. To benefit from local knowledge and to focus joint efforts. It feels like Emma's been thrown a biscuit as well, though. You know, it feels like, I suppose, placating the community. They've not said we will do what the community want. You know, they've not said that, have they? They've not said that we're going to accept the community on the next case and we're going to be there talking to... They said greater consideration could have been provided. So there's a little biscuit thrown to the community, to Emma. And if you're reading, they're publishing this publicly, it's political. So they want to absolutely suck off the tennis club because they're the people that elect them and vote for them and, you know, like, care a fuck about the crime commissioner and things like that, aren't they? So, like, they're absolutely going to want to suck up to the community. So I feel like the community have been thrown a biscuit, but the actual, it's a hollow biscuit because they're not really going to do anything in the future. And what else are they going to do in the future? What's on my shirt, sorry, is have you seen Shannon Matthews? Have you seen Shannon Matthews? Because there was a big appeal to try and find Shannon Matthews, and she was hiding under the bed, having been given a load of tramadol by her uncle. So, you know, but a big consideration in the future, greater consideration will be provided to try and harness the community, control the narrative, and as a resource in early search efforts. But you've got to be careful in that, of course. A great resource in early search efforts in different ways, because you literally cannot, I think it's ridiculous to say. So she's maybe in this dangerous river. So what we're going to do is we're going to send out members of the community up and down the riverbanks to search for her. And then tomorrow we'll send out another search party to find the people that fell in the river the first time round. Because, you know, some chuffer from up the village has slipped in the river. Do you know what I mean? Like, because people aren't all that smart. Like, you get 80 of them out and send them up and down the river, you're going to be fishing out another 2 before the end of the day. So you health and safety and considerations like that. And that's the reason why certain other groups like Peter Folding's Specialist Group International, they're sent in to do things that are either health and safety or political nightmares, like removing protesters. And, removing protesters can come under both banners in ways, can't it? Help both health and safety and political. But it just... Yeah, I can understand why the police wouldn't... I'm not... at the time, I would have also felt that, why aren't we doing more to find Nikki and how are we not? But I still don't think that sending people out in the dark to run up and down the river is a good idea. So, but maybe they could have helped to coordinate those search efforts or focus them. I kind of agree with that, actually, that it's a bit like if you've got a load of kids running around, if you give them all a colouring book to keep them busy. And that's kind of what Emma did, is she gave them these, and I was critiquing it, like she gave them these maps and sent them on these like nature walks. But it kind of kept them busy, I suppose. But there are things that you could get them doing that is probably in between being busy and also safe and also trying to find Nikki. So I don't know. Scene management and control. We'll do scene management and control, and then I feel we've done a really good, solid episode again, and we'll move through this whole thing as long as it takes. I'm aware it's going to be a few episodes, so... Scene management and control. The bend of the river near to the bench was most likely point of entry by Nicola, and it was considered the only safe entry point for the dive team. From the... Oh, for fuck's sake. You've not, have you? So there is no use in doing a forensic analysis of the... Oh, you chuffers. When did the divers go in? Day one. Yeah? Well, day one they had that thermal camera. So how useful is examination of the entry point after you've had 3 or 4 chuffers with a camera going up and down it? Like, maybe the forensics were useless because by the time you considered getting them down there has already been several people up and down the riverbank, including a dive team maybe, but yeah. From the outset and at its subsequent visits by police and support services, a decision was made not to secure the bench and vicinity area with a police cordon. At first attendance by LFRS, Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service, it was not known whether this was a body rescue or a body recovery. Body rescue or recovery. And an effort to preserve life will always be the prioritised emergency service response. So, at first attendance, the fire service went there first. This is news to me. And they didn't know if they were looking for someone who was still alive or someone that was dead. But because they didn't know, the idea that someone might still be alive was prioritised. Based on the facts known at the time, the attending POISA lead deemed it unnecessary to demarcate and preserve a crime scene. The POISA lead recorded that, if there had been any indication of a crime, the area around the bench would have been cordoned. So you don't think that the fact that she's not there is an indication that there might have been a crime? I mean, what do you need? Like a lead piping lying on the ground? Like a note saying, left here by Professor Plum? Like, she wasn't there. Are they trying to save money on cordoning? It's going to cost a lot in police tape, this is. Have you got a roll of police tape? No, we've run out. What we're using these days is we're using sellotape with the word police written on it in biro. So we can only cordon off quite small areas. We've got sellotape and we've written police on it in biro, and we can't do this. Would you not think it would have been possibly a good idea? Just better safe than sorry. Especially as well, this blows my mind. We've got a slippy, wet riverbank that we consider to be dangerous enough for someone to have fallen in the river, but not enough to have left slimy, slippy, falling in marks. And the fire people have turned up. The fire people, that's who's going in first. You know, Peter Folding aside, the fire people are going in first. And they've turned up. And if I were a police officer at this moment, I know that I'm allowed to cordon off the area for public safety, even if not a crime. So I would cordon off the area immediately for public safety, even if not a crime. And I would say to my superior officer, yes, ma'am, I wondered if you might consider it a crime scene and send the forensics down. If not, I have cordoned off the area as part of public safety. So I think I've done a good job, ma'am. Thank you very much. Can I be relieved of my duty? Thank you. Instead of, oh, I didn't bother because, you know, fuck it. Someone died in that river earlier. We've got someone looking for them. And what could be more safe than that? The fire people are already there. So if anyone falls in now, the fire people will just fish them straight out. No. No, I'm not having that. I think the indication of the crime is Nicola's absence. Just in a small way. Later on, obviously, we heard someone screamed. And in the inquest, it was confirmed that someone had done a scream. So that, and later on, you find out that Nicola had injuries, like bruises, stuff that couldn't have been if she fell in the river, it happened then, like blood that trickled down and went under her chin. So that's gravity takes it downwards, and then you fall, like if you're in the river and it doesn't make sense. So lots of indications of a crime later on. So if you'd have known that, oh no, if I only had known that late, I only knew that later. So hindsight's easy, isn't it? Well, I'll just, you know, write that in my report for the police. Like, why on earth are you not cordoning off the area, even if not for public safety, and then later on examination of a crime scene? And the only thing that I can really state as standing out to me here is that you've got people like the police, the fire rescue service, they want entrance to the water at that position, and they're going to be up and down the same bank that Nicola apparently fell in. So good luck getting any forensics off that. We've been up and down it on a slide, like on a sledge. We've been going up and down it on a sledge with a boat and like 10 sets of Wellington boots. So I suppose maybe they just thought, fuck it. Like, is that a cigarette end down there? Yeah, I've been smoking. Like, it's my DNA now. Like, whoops. I just don't say let's just not cordon it off. I haven't got any of that tape anyway. I'm still waiting on a new roll of sellotape and a biro. Anyway, prior to police attendance, Nicola's personal items have been retrieved and handled by several witnesses and her partner. Good point. Good point. Prior to police attendance, Nicola's personal items had been retrieved and are handled by several witnesses and her partner. Shouts out Lucia Olsen in chat. The ball chucker hanging on the back gate. I didn't really get what that was. I'll have to review it and have another look. If so, then I would also expect to see that. If we're saying there was a ball and there was a, and I'm not going on the CCTV little flash of orange because I don't think that counts because it was like the size of the yellow high vis, and like it would have to be a giant tennis ball, that would. But if they've got a ball chucker, why didn't she have the ball chucker with her? Why was that not found on the bank as well? Like maybe that's something that people have been looking for. I don't know, but I don't really know because I didn't spot it myself, but interesting. Prior to police attendance, her items have been retrieved and handled by several witnesses and her partner. This statement is basically saying you can't get much off the phone. Paul's had hold of it. Like, they're kind of stating it, aren't they? Don't you armchair detectives get thinking you can get much off the phone. Paul's had hold of it, so nor could we. The area around the bench had experienced the footfall of approximately 20 people. The opportunities for any forensic recovery were considered by both the POISA lead, the on-call detective superintendent, and the investigating officer. It's exactly what I just said, isn't it? I literally just said they're going to write off the crime scene by saying too many people have been walking around it. The on-call detective superintendent and the investigating officer, with no criminal activity suspected, forensic examination was deemed to be of no value. because 20 different people have been walking around there. By the time you had the opportunity to seal it off. So you've got Paul, you've got Penny, you've got the lady that she called to turn up at the thing and tie it up with string. You've got do run, they do run. The two police that Paul went back to home to visit, maybe they turned up back at the scene. Or isn't one of those police? That's a police. One of those is a police, so I'm not going to count them because they could have said, hang on, stop walking around here. I need to seal it off. How many? Why 20? The area around the bench had experienced the footfall of approximately 20 people prior to police attendance. Prior to police attendance, Nicola's personal items have been retrieved and handled by several witnesses and her partner. We all agree on that, agreed. But the area around the bench experienced the footfall of approximately 20 people. That's quite a lot of people. I was able to get up to like 5 on the one hand there. I mean, I've only got 5 fingers on one hand and a thumb. On the other hand, there's 4 fingers and a thumb. And at the end of the day, it gets dark. But who are these 20 people? The fire and rescue service then, yeah? Like there was a bigger response from fire and rescue. Fire service, they said. The fire people came down. They're saying there's more of a response from them than the actual police on the day, yeah? By the time the police got there with the ability to seal off the area, there's 20 people up and down. 20? 20 is a lot. But you're going to use that to sort of say, right, yeah, even if there was like, but if there was only 5, you might still get some forensics. I just think it's really disingenuous to say forensic examination was deemed to be of no value. I mean, I suppose the report is saying that's what happened. And we all think that it would have been better to do at least some. Even if you did the forensic and said, hey, we did a look over with the forensics. We got 20 different footprints. We probably think they're of no value, but, you know, we got them anyway. Like, you see, I can't, yeah. A crime scene examiner was not requested to support any considerations for scene preservation and a more thorough forensic examination. So, we don't have that. The notion of a scene and a cordoned area was later discussed by the review team with the NPCC lead for strategic underwater search and the principal dive contractor. Their view was that while the investigation continued and the outcome was not known, a cordon would have provided greater control and protection to the area. Yeah, duh. What did I just say? You've got the firemen going in. You've got people coming walking up and down with their dogs. Like, with their fucking dogs. You've got to cordon it off. School kids could come out from after school and walk past. And then, like, fall in the river looking at the firemen. You've got to cordon it off. Just for health and safety. It's slippy enough for someone to fall in and die. And to this day, we're not having any sort of fencing, or like the council haven't decided to like put up any protective, you know, they're not going to gravel that bit of path. They're not going to put up a rubber ring in case you fall in. It's just, to this day, it's just like, if you want to come in and fall in at the Nicola Bulley site, come on a wet day, go for a slide. You too may hit the water in 3-degree weather. 3 degrees is enough to sink you. It just... unbelievable, in my opinion, that could have continued in that way. And that, no, I feel like other people at the scene might have said, do you not want to cordon this off? Should you not? All the media turned up. They had a fucking gazebo. Like, it just really feels like this is bizarre, but can't cry over spilled milk, I suppose. They've given us their reasoning. Am I doing an Emma White now because I know better than the police and I had all these people at the village hall and we should have been doing this, should have been doing that, shoulda, woulda, coulda. Cordoning it off wouldn't have got Nikki out the water if she were in there. But, you know, bringing it back to Nicola, it would have given us, like, cordoning it off and taking photographs, whilst there may have been very little value, as a formality, it would have provided good practice. And as a formality, it would provide a good practice, and as like, let's say there was one, like, the thing with forensics is that 100 years ago, a cigarette butt would have provided you with very little evidence. But today, you can take DNA, all sorts off it, and you can put people in prison based on a cigarette butt now, can't you? So, what may have seemed insignificant or trodden on or messed up doesn't matter. It's what we've got. So let's take photographs of it all in the best possible quality we can. Where we can, let's try and look for any signs of forensic evidence, entry into the water. The underwater cameras, like, it's kind of annoying to me the forensics weren't on the scenes before the police rescue, but then I suppose, sorry, the fire rescue, but then I suppose you're going to do fire rescue first. They really should have considered going in at the water at a different position. Like, that was an oversight by the fire people. They should have cordoned off the area and said, we're going to go in the river to look for her, but we're not going in here because this is maybe where she fell in. So we're going to search that area, but we're not, like, you could have had that underwater thermal camera taking photographs of the riverbed, like, see whether it was disturbed even. You know, there's a lot of forensic evidence that could have been there that's been either disturbed, destroyed, or not even bothered to be recorded. And it's completely possible that even something minor could have ended up standing out. Or that the that the future could reveal more if you recorded things because of better technology in the future that can revise, like, DNA now and stuff. I'm not saying they, you know, would have picked something like scrape up the mud and later on you can find the DNA off it, but I'm saying that literally happens, doesn't it? Like, certain pieces of evidence become more poignant later on in cases, so you just record it all. So it's bizarre to me. But I can see where we're going to end up with a pat on the head and a biscuit, because you're not to be blamed, because the notion of a scene was discussed, and so it was looked at, and they decided that it had been trodden over by loads of people, and that it's not worth it. But the NPC lead for Strategic Underwater Search said a cordon would have provided greater control and protection. Additionally, the National Search Advisor and the National SIO Advisor both recognised the benefits of a scene cordon and felt it would have supported the open-minded approach to hypothesis. So it's like they didn't even think that there was a crime, so they didn't outwardly display the work to go into the idea it might have been a crime. While working hypothesis was that a fall in the river had occurred, the first responders and POISA lead could not possibly have ruled out a third-party intervention and criminal activity. Whilst the working hypothesis was that she fell in the river, you couldn't possibly have ruled out a third-party intervention. So no biscuit here, no pat on the head here. At that early stage, the witnesses and CCTV inquiries that came to support the hypothesis were yet to be undertaken, and their outcomes were yet to be established. So you should have had that as a crime scene. If the working hypothesis had later turned out to be incorrect, later opportunities to recover the scene and conduct forensic examinations would have been lost entirely. Exactly. Like, I'm on board with that. How much money are they paying these people to do this inquiry? This independent external inquiry here. How much money are they paying these people to do this? Because they could have just watched YouTube videos. Like, don't shit on social media and tell me it's fucking raining. We've been saying this. I didn't need it written in your school report. Thanks very much, Andrew. A star, 3 A stars at Snowdon school report. Get off, like, you know, common sense that is. Damn it. Common sense. Conclusions. At incidents where it's unclear whether a crime scene has been committed, all responders should consider the potential outcome of criminal activity. Decisions where the golden hour, I mentioned it the other day, decisions where the golden hour measures are required, including the preservation of a crime scene, will need careful consideration. Such decisions will need an assessment of the certainty of support for a particular hypothesis. It's often the case that at the earlier stages of investigation, the hypothesis or hypotheses can change, and decision-making must take account of this possibility. Once a decision is made not to seek or recover evidence, the opportunity is then lost forever. Whilst I agree with what they're saying here as a conclusion, and it's something that I've just literally been banging on about, I do think it's important to consider that I lost my tennis ball over the wall, and then the police come on, like, my house is now a crime scene. Or, like, you know, someone steals a car and they've last been seen up this street, so everyone's house is now locked down and the police are going to search house to house. Like, you know, crime scene everywhere now, because the police are allowed to, more importantly, they should. If we're a bit worried about anything, it's now a crime scene, everyone's locked down. Like, I don't know if I support more power in that direction, but the early investigation used a working hypothesis that Nicola had fallen into the river. From the information known at the time, this review considers the working hypothesis to be correct. However, the scene should have been cordoned off and subject to forensic examination at an early stage. In doing so, additional benefits would have been realised, such as controlling who entered the scene. We would have had more control over who entered the scene and helped the search efforts. And what they mean there is a certain man and his boat and his sonar might not have been allowed in the river. Maybe, I don't know. On Monday the 30th of January, a new SIO was appointed, so that's next step, isn't it? So we'll get on to the new SIO. That's not the new one we were already talking about, is it? They've now appointed another new one. Yeah, Saturday experience yeah. So then after this, after this part, that's the early investigation, then they appoint a new SIO, so we'll come to that next. You all good in chat? You all chilling? Any questions? Yeah, big ups Broadmoor in, mate. I see what you're saying there, waiting for its whistleblower. I do think there are still people that could come forward, but they're not going to come forward and implicate themselves in a crime, so... But yeah. This is a really interesting and important part of the investigation, like reading through Lancashire Constabulary's operational response to the reported missing person Nicola Bulley independent external review. It's a bit of a dry aspect of it, although it seems to be quite interesting to the audience. We have obviously got the response from specialist groups come up, and we looked around Paul's house, so that was an interesting episode on Super Chuffer. There's the full Nicola Bulley playlist if you want to familiarise yourself with any aspect of what we've talked about over the time. But I feel it's a very politically contrived aspect. I feel like, I've said it a number of times, we're now in a sort of political space rather than focusing on the truth of what's happened to Nicola. So it's not my favourite bit of it necessarily. And there's a lot more politics going on, and a lot more right now. You know, if there's conversations to be had regarding this report, the people that are in the report, there are other, you know, we're not through with this report yet. There are more people to come on to. Obviously, Specialist Group International have got to have their say in response, haven't they? So when it comes to that politics, we have to be pretty careful, in my opinion, about not getting drawn into a political game, not being a pawn in a political game, observing where it is a political game, who stands to gain and who is seeking to gain, who has a lot to lose. You know, we need to be careful there. We need to be really careful. Have I ever considered joining the police? Oh, you watched me smoking weed the whole time. They need to legalise marijuana before I'm allowed to join the police. Good question though, my blind chair Alfie. I'll assist them with their inquiries, but only if they force me. Yeah, we do need a Nutter Watch. I'm thinking of doing a Nutter Watch very soon. Probably tomorrow. And Deptford, thanks for saying I'd make a good detective. What I think is, like I say, that analysing people in the media, like Super Chuffer Channel, if I'm anything, I'm a like body language analysis, react, that sort of stuff there, isn't it? And then social commentary, but also with the leaning towards psychology, I guess, with this podcast. And that's how I see Super Chuffer going on, is we will be continuing to cover the CoP report. We will follow that up with Peter Folding's response. I think I've got a bit to say about Peter Folding after that as well. I'm waiting to see how the cards sort of fall. As you know, there's some things happening at the moment over on his side of things. But he's not someone I entirely like. Public, let's say this, right? If you're creating your own public image and you're concerned with your own public image, and if you're being thrown under the bus, I've said this last time, by the report here, and you're having to come out and do response statements, and if your business and like financial interests and like extensive land and big house and all that are at stake in some way in this political machination, you know, obviously we've got to follow up and look into that ourselves. And Huntington Life Science, I would protest against, certainly not remove protesters from. So yeah, I'm not 100% on that. You know, working for the police, working closely with the police, being paid by the government to work with the police. There's a lot of people on the same side there that corroborate the inquiry in some way. You know, she was in the water. Ultimately, what I'd like to do is get to some truth for Nicola. But yeah, the Super Chuffer channel, like other things will happen, like with body language, reacts and stuff like that, and we'll cover them. And on into the new year, I've clearly been saying it a lot, you know, I've got the skills, I've got the cameras, I've got the budget, Steve's got the back operation that he's recovering from, but we've got plans on expanding our content offering into the world a little more, and I'll still, you know, supply body language reacts, content, stuff like that. As far as Nicola Bulley goes, like, I'm going to cover these things. I still want to sort of, it might be called like the Nicola Bulley things that I can't say in one video because they're too short, but don't like Nicola Bulley 10 things I found on Twitter or something. But there's like other bits and pieces to the story, like this image itself is not a whole video, but needs to be sort of stated clearly. You know, the CCTV's fake. Look at this. I mean, obviously it is a whole video. Danvers has done it, but it's a minute, and I can want to do 3-hour live stream, so I don't think I can turn this 1 minute into 3 hours conversation. But like, there's a lot of little things like that I could put together. So there's still a lot more for me to sort of say on the Nicola Bulley thing, and I'm looking forward to finishing off this process of going through this report, reacting to the press conference. And keeping an eye on how things progress. Certainly keeping an eye on how things progress. But yeah. But Super Chuffer, I'm really grateful you're here. Super Chats, coffee.com, subscribe. I'm really grateful you're here. I hope everyone understands that it's not all Nicola Bulley all the time. And nor will it be. But I'm also not going to sort of struggle to grab hold of the next shocking murder unless they come out and, like, we did this live stream of Derek Johnson's body language because he did an interview And he seems like just like Paul Ansel and people like that, like Chris Watts. Like when they come about and do their interviews, I'm going to be on that. And other stuff where people do interviews and I do react to. But I hope people appreciate that. My position on the amount of content and the way I produce my content around the Nicola Bulley stuff, There's a new floodlight on the house, is there? I might look more deeply at the house again, little bits and pieces that we missed or whatever. Have I done anything on the Idaho 4? No, and I don't intend to. Like, it doesn't necessarily interest me. Like, true crime per se is a horrible thing to look at every day. It's murder and it's sadness and it's sorrow and it's loss. And I don't remember anyone in the Idaho 4 murders doing any big media interviews that I can analyse as a body language. I'm not a detective, and I respect the police and stuff like that. And again, I don't think I'm going to find some, I'll throw some shade at a certain nutter, obviously, but I don't think I'm going to find some special shadows and crack the case and become a big person and have a book written about me or write my own book because of, I'm not really out there on the streets being a detective. I'm sat at home at my computer talking into a microphone. So people seem to appreciate the way I intuit my way around body language and reacts. And this Nicola Bulley case has taken a bit of a stronger life of its own insofar as we do want the truth for Nicola. I got engaged with it and, talk on a more deeper level than just body language reacts. But in the main, I know who I am and what I want to be and what makes me happy. And certainly looking at true crime every day and poring over things like that doesn't make me happy. So I'm not going to do that. And I'll tell you what, the true crime community is an absolute shocking mess. They call it crama, true crime and drama. And it absolutely is a shocking mess of true crime and drama. And there are people out there in that community that will literally mention channels' names at the start of their videos to try and draw people into a squabble. I'm not prepared to do that, and I overview that. And on Battery Exhausted, we look at some of the people and their squabbles, but I overview it. I'm not going to be drawn into it. So I'm really grateful that you're here for this and supportive of this. So yeah, look out for the next episode, which will be due. I plan on doing these sort of every other day, every 2 days. I don't want to let it go between episodes too long because this needs to be a series of episodes that make sense and exist together. But in between those days, I'll be on Twitch or Battery Exhausted. People really want another Nutter Watch, so I think another Nutter Watch is in order. And whether I go on Twitch later, I mean, what is it now? 8 o'clock. Yeah, I'm probably not going to do Nutter Watch tonight, so Twitch later just for a bit of a chill out, and then Nutter Watch tomorrow, I guess. Watch these spaces. I think disappointingly today, when I overview what I've done, is that there's been very little focus on Nikki in this part of it. A lot of focus on sort of... They said the report was not about blame at the start. We're not apportioning blame here, but a sort of major focus here on... people being angry at the police that they weren't engaged with, and the police not having management of the crime scene. Not a crime scene, the scene. But pointing a few fingers here, at each other, but a few pats on the head as well, really. And the basic idea that you shouldn't be angry at them for not controlling the scene, because really, there wasn't much to control. Everyone's rolling around on the floor there anyway. Big ups, Michael Fish. Thanks for the result. Do a notify me please is not getting notifications. About the time and shape when I'll be doing it, but I drop, if you want to find out if I'm going live, on Super Chuffer on on Twitter, I will tweet sort of 15, 20 minutes, an hour before I go live. I'll tweet it. And then also on the Discord, if you want to be a member of the Discord, It's basically like our own little. It's like Facebook or something like that. It's a forum board conversation space. It's its own app, and it's quite a modern, functional. Lots of people use it for their streams. Like streamers have Discords, so you can get in the Discord and you can chat to each other there. But trolls will be moderated out. But otherwise, it's a bit of an open space. You know, obviously, social rules apply, and it's a public space, so don't post your picture of your front of your house and, you know, your address on it. But it's a good community. So it's a good community. So yeah, if you really want to know if I'm going live and you're worried about not getting a notification, get in the Discord, because that will give you a notification, because I'll drop it in Super Chuffer. Like, it's called, there's a room in there called Find Super Chuffer, and I will drop it in there when I go live, so it will ping on your phone, Discord, Super Chuffer just dropped in this room, Super Chuffer, you know, and you can set up the notification there, or you could have your Twitter, or whatever, Twitter isn't it, Twitter, X, you can have that notification as well. So, oh yeah, and Slinky Socks has done her premiere earlier, so I'm sorry that I streamed over it. Like, things are just going to happen like that sometimes. But get over to Slinky Socks and watch her premiere about something that I'm not going to mention what it's about on this channel. But Slinky Socks, our mod, has a channel. So if you're not subscribed there, then you certainly should be. If you at everyone, they will get a mention as well. Discord. I'm not atting anyone in Discord. Thanks. I'm not doing that. I'm just dropping the link and then that's it. I'm not atting everyone. That's too much. There's loads. Like, how many people come to watch? Loads. Do you want me to get 200 ats? And I sit there typing them all out. Maybe there's a way of doing it, but can we get Slinky Socks' link to her channel in chat? I'll get it. I'll do it. But I don't want to show the channel because obviously, you know, whilst it's got all Nutter Watch stuff on it, and we're keeping these things separate, and we don't on this Super Chuffer channel. We don't. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to get drawn into drama by discussing and debating other channels on here. In that context, so we do it elsewhere, and I think that's good for the audience as well. I think people don't want to get like bogged down by all that crap, so it's not even worth voicing on this channel. But it's not crap, it's loads of fun, and we really enjoy it on Battery Exhausted and Slinky Socks' edits. So there, go and support Slinky Socks and subscribe to her. You put at everyone. You can put at everyone. Wow, maybe I should. Although, can you? You literally type at everyone. Can you? Okay, I might try it, but then maybe everyone will get cross, like, you know, pinging off everyone's inbox all the time. Next time, watch out, Discord. You're getting a notification.
It's raining again. I couldn't be happier.
Swish and then whoosh.
Great live as always. Thanks for this and recent content, Scott. Super Chuffer owes 10 hugs.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Kaz. Those of you who watch me on Twitch will be aware that I was going to start this last week, but I felt a bit emotional over it and had a funny dream about a fireplace, and yeah, I feel good. I feel good. I feel really grateful, really happy. I'm glad to be on the main channel doing serious content. I mean, we're going to do messy about content here as well and have fun sometimes, but really we know what the score is on the different channels now. We've separated things out into places where people want to be. I always keep shouting out Super Chuffer for you as well. I keep shouting that out because we're watching all of Neighbours. Well, we are watching Neighbours from the start what we do is sometimes on Twitch we watch Neighbours, and we've gone back to the very first episode. We're up to the third episode, and it is a lot of fun. And we're also going to we're going to try and sort of schedule in a once weekly watch along stream of old TV, but I think we have to do it on Twitch because of copyright problems, and then upload it to Super Chuffer for you. So if you want to check out what's going on there and have a look at that, we've also got a Sunday and Chill Gaming, but that's going to go on a different channel. We're going to do the gaming on a different channel, but Super Chuffer for you is now pretty solidly just if you want to chill and relax and just watch something that's not brain ache and heartache, which is like what I like doing more often than not, then Super Chuffer for you is starting to grow as well. So shouts out me again. You can subscribe to that as well. And yeah, I'll be back with this in the next couple of days, or battery exhausted tomorrow if you fancy that sort of stuff. And you be good, I guess. It's about time to say that, isn't it? So thanks to everyone. You've got T-1 minute while you can say thanks to everyone. And then I'll give it like half an hour while I quickly check the dog doesn't need walking and the cat doesn't need feeding, and I'll be on Twitch after this, which I will give you the link. And of course, if you know how to find me now, I'll post it on the I'll post it on the chuffing, other places, but I'll be on there in a minute, in a little bit, maybe playing a bit of games, chatting about how this went and what we're going to be doing in the future and stuff. Just chilling and chatting, maybe doing a bit of nutty watch over there a little bit as well. Yeah. So you be good, and if you can't be good,